Okay. And here we are again with Va'era. The 10 plagues, or most of them at least, figure very prominently in Va'era and are featured in much of the art inspired by the parashah. From a 13th century English manuscript, this is the third plague by early Gothic English illuminator William de Brails, whose distinctive work was featured in religious manuscripts, many of which were pocket-sized, suggesting that they may have been made for sponsors who were wealthy enough to afford a prayer book that they could carry with them. There's Moses with those horns that are often featured in classical art, a misunderstanding or mistranslation of the light beaming from his face described in later parashot. And de Brails makes it look like he's wearing a Viking helmet. Aaron stands behind his brother as the seated Egyptian monarch and his court look on, the plague's cloud of gnats descending upon them. Notice how his characters are stepping outside the frame of the image. There's a certain medieval whimsy about the style. In fact, even that self-portrait worked into another of the illuminations. He signed it, W. de Brails, who painted me. One consistent source of Va'era images has been illustrated Passover Haggadahs over the centuries. This is from the Brother Haggadah, done in 14th century Spain, commissioned by an affluent Jewish family. It's one of several elaborately illuminated Haggadahs that survived the Inquisition of a century later by being taken out of Spain to Italy and other Mediterranean countries. Featuring the ornate style typical of Spanish illuminators, the Brother Haggadah is now preserved in the British Library, along with 3 other complete Haggadot from the era. Moving up to the 18th century, this is Moses and Aaron Before Pharaoh by Benjamin West. Born in Pennsylvania while it was still a British colony, he made his artistic career in England. Self-taught, his dynamic depictions of battles, mythology, and biblical scenes, as well as portraits of the era's rich and famous, made him a favorite of King George, despite his colonial origins and friendships with the likes of Ben Franklin. His Pharaoh looks more like an ancient Greek or Roman, but West also includes notable Egyptian images, for instance, the pyramids and a sphinx in the palace scene where Moses' staff is turned into a serpent, causing the scribe to drop his papyrus in shock, I guess. Spanish surrealist Salvador Dali makes the staff into a snake miracle into a study in contrasts. The background of ancient Egypt is bright blue skies dotted with puffy clouds, and in the landscape, groups of ordinary, if perhaps naked, people. While in the foreground, Dali gives us a white-bearded Moses, the correct beams of light shining from his head, by the way, confronting a stiffly seated Pharaoh whose magicians have turned their own staffs into snakes, only to have them devoured by the one produced by Moses' staff. Like so much of Dali's work, the contrasts leave much to the viewer's imagination for interpretation. For instance, that figure in red in the middle, an ominous symbol? We don't know. A contemporary artist, Karen Foreman, gives us a photorealistic snake in all its slithery glory, but also notice how she shows the transformation from the gnarled wooden staff into the deadly serpent. Born in Switzerland, she now lives and works in the Northern California city of Santa Rosa and uses a variety of media, from photography and digital art to classical painting. Jewish themes are woven throughout her works, especially the Parashot illustration series, from which this is the Va'era entry. Alabama artist and educator Star Weems calls her Parsha-inspired paintings ancient illuminations, and for Va'era, she has us looking upward as giant hailstones shoot down from the clouds in the 7th plague. A native of Huntsville in northern Alabama's Tornado Alley, she knows the destructive potential of even ordinary hailstorms, lending some dynamic drama to the painting. The COVID pandemic was perhaps an inspiration for Russian-born Israeli artist Elisheva Nessis in this disturbing depiction of the sixth plague, pestilence, with the masked people shown down on all fours, affected along with the livestock. From a series of original paintings she calls her modern Bible, Elisheva describes her art as a mix of actuality and eternity, inspired by her home in Jerusalem, what she calls the center of this mix. Southern California muralist and designer Hillel Smith gives us a blood-red image for the first plague, the Va'era entry in his Parsha poster series, using advertising imagery to illuminate the chapter. This single drop of blood falling to the Nile, spreading out in rings of ripples. A calligrapher, Hillel Smith, also always includes the name of the parashah in stylized Hebrew lettering. You have to look at the ripple to find Vav, Aleph, Resh, and Aleph.
Oh, yeah.
Very stylized, but they're there. We began with illuminations from an ancient Haggadah, so let's turn to one of the most celebrated modern versions of the Pesach story, with numerous images of events in this parashah. The Haggadah by Arthur Szyk. Born in Poland, he was interested and involved in art from a very young age. By his 20s, he studied in France, developing his characteristic, colorful caricature style, often filled with biting satire and political commentary. Though not brought up in a particularly observant home, Szyk was always conscious of his Jewish roots, and in the 1930s he began working on the dozens of original paintings for what would become his magnum opus, this illustrated Passover Haggadah. As the Nazis were gaining power in Europe, Szyk saw dramatic parallels with the events in the story, and it's hard to miss the imagery, for instance, in the center of the Seder plate, the space for Maror, with the snarling overseer, his red armband prominently displayed as he beats down a Hebrew slave. Originally, Szyk had made it even clearer, putting swastikas on that armband, but he reluctantly had to paint over them at the insistence of his publisher in England, where in those years before World War II, appeasement was the prevailing policy. During and after the war, he lived and worked in the U.S. and continued using his art to entertain while also making powerful political statements. A fervent advocate for the creation of Israel, he had spent time as a young man in the Palestine of the British Mandate. Szyk said the day of Israeli independence was the happiest in his life. In the cover art for the Haggadah, he wrote, "I am a Jew praying in art. If I have succeeded in any measure, if I have gained the power of reception among the elite of the world, then I owe it all to the teachings, traditions, and eternal virtues of my people." Arthur Szyk, and that's art for Va'era.
I'm pretty sure we have a copy of the Szyk Haggadah here.
I got it right here.
Yeah, we have that too.
Oh, look at that.
It's a beautifully bound
Yeah.
book, by the way.
It's absolutely gorgeous. I agree.
Yeah, and I just love to look at all the pictures. They're just amazing artwork. Can't see it, of course.
There were some things that in researching it, there were some things I found that were fascinating because he really had a lot of anti-Nazi imagery in there originally, and the British wouldn't, the publisher that he had signed up with wouldn't allow that. He had Pharaoh, Hitler as Pharaoh in one of the sketches that he did, one of the original sketches.
Fascinating.
And he was clearly aware of what was happening in Poland at the time, and worked that into his art.
So the whole cover is repose, and you can see all the 12 tribes on there, and beset with jewels on the back is the
That's beautiful.
Yeah,
That's good. The one I have is paperback, so that's a beautiful one.
We have one of those too.
Where did you get that, Arnie? Is it...
my bar mitzvah.
Oh,
Yeah, it's kind of old.
wow.
I think it's possible the one we have was given to Ben for his bar mitzvah.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm
I
glad.
just
they're
want to
still
thank you,
making them.
Alan, from an art history point of view, because I have never seen anything that literal from Salvador Dali. I didn't know he had that period in him. I wonder what.
I understand. I couldn't recall another of the from the Torah from the Old Testament. He has a lot of Christian imagery, or art with Christian imagery and saints and pretty gruesome takes on it. But I don't recall another Torah scene in his art. So
You don't
Can you send
remember
can
the one with the matzah melting over the table?
the matzah brie hanging on the
Right.
tree.
can you send me the Dolly one?
Sure, sure.
Thanks, Alan. Thanks.
Okay. Make a note to do that.
Oh, Aviva found our copy of the stick too.
Ah.
Is it the same one?
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh, if Arnie's was from his bar mitzvah, it might be the original one published in 1940. No, no, I'm sorry.
I don't know when this one was. I mean,
I think before we get started, and I know we're already on live, but I think it's really hard as we're coming up to another International Holocaust Memorial Day to get the images straight of seeing masked people in the streets rounding up according to how people look. I mean, I try not to have that be the image that comes to my mind every time, but it's right there, right in front of our eyes.
Well, that's understandable.
Yeah, and it really fits into what we're reading
Mhm.
Yeah.
magically.
I just missed what you guys said. Can you hear me?
Yes.
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Love your background, Sarah.
Oh yeah, I'm finally out of the desert. I made it. It feels like 40 years.
I love it.
Are we on
You already
Facebook?
look more, you
Yeah.
already look more tan, like you,
Yeah.
like,
No, I'm not. I'm definitely have not been in the sun or to the beach or anything like that. It was extremely foggy on Wednesday, and I went out for a ride with Rebecca up to Waimea to pick Layla up, and it came home and had an exacerbation. And so I've just been staying in, but it looks clear out today. Looks really clear.
Beautiful down here.
Yeah, it's really pretty, but Wednesday it was really bad up here.
The
Yeah,
last couple of days have been really gorgeous here. Huala is shown in its glory right across our back here.
Well, maybe I'll take a ride outside in my wheelchair later.
yeah, just check. You can check the air quality.
Yeah.
There's a site, and then you can know by the numbers when not to go out, when to stay in.
Yeah.
And you have enough wind.
All I have to do is look outside and I can tell.
Well, you have enough wind up there in Waikoloa to blow a lot of the fog away, so that's
We
good.
do usually. I mean, it's been beautiful since I got here. It was just the one day Wednesday, then Thursday it rained all day. So that probably cleared
good.
the air.
Mhm.
But yeah, anyway, all I have to do is look outside and right away I know.
Mm. Well, I guess
All right.
with our
So
Mishabera,
if anybody wants to stay on after to talk story, I was thinking about that, and maybe that's the time to do it for if Alan doesn't mind leaving it open. If anybody does
Mhm.
want to, uh, for 15, 20 minutes, I think that's all we really need to share
Sure, no problem.
whatever our feelings are. So, okay, that sounds good.
All right. So let's start our Mishabera by looking at the screen. I see here Sarah
I'm here.
and Marilyn.
Yeah, I'm gonna get off video, but
Okay.
Why are you going off? We want to see your face.
yeah, well, okay, you can see me now, but because I'm not.
Look at me.
Well, who
Come
wants
on.
to put out a name for a Mishabera this week?
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
Who am I thinking of? My friend Corrine Holler, who is in a care home with dementia. And I'll start with her. I can't think.
My neighbor Barbara Underwood, she's recovering from lung surgery.
And of course you, Marilyn.
Hmm.
And of course you, Marilyn.
Yeah, and you and Jan.
Yeah. And Jan. Yeah, Jan. And,
The Jackson, Mississippi Jewish community.
Yes. And Aileen, she's having some issues.
Barbara Lewis.
And
My
My
brother, Shalom Benim Ben Tzvi.
my daughter Joanna
uh,
and Ray. My batteries. Oh, I didn't charge this thing.
Dan Levitt.
11.
Jerry and Alice. My sister Chaya, our friend Gina.
And our friend Mike Bromberg, who just texted us. I think a group of us might have received the text. His mother passed away a few weeks ago, and dealing with that loss, dealing with that heartache.
I'm thinking especially when Aviva does like a general call for healing. There's a song from an old Broadway show called Dear World, it says, please take your medicine, dear world. It's based on a movie or something, and I can't remember what it is right now. It feels like
because we do the Debbie Friedman version, which includes renewal of body, renewal of spirit. So that's why it's so, it makes it Jewishly important to think of all the people who are suffering because of someone else, and whose bodies may be fine, but whose spirits are,
Yeah.
suffering. So in that we can't ignore, as Arnie put in there, we don't never need to look very far to see injustice around us. And so we have to extend it to, we could just spend the entire time just naming people or situations or whatever, but it means for our hearts to be open.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I just add Keli Kotubete?
Of course.
Keli Kotubete.
Ready?
Yeah, I know I'm forgetting somebody. Go on. Sorry.
Ready? Nisha Berachavotenu Makor HaBracha May the source of strength help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen. Nisha berachim otenu v'kor habracha yavoteh. Bless those in need of healing with Shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, oh,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Baruch
Baruch
atah
atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu
Tzivanu la'aseh
lahadlik
Divrei
Torah.
Torah.
There's a lot of reading today, so let me look at the screen for a minute. Vic, would you like to start us off? Okay, you have to unmute. And Alan, we're going to go in this reading. How should we do it? We're just going to go through 13 right now. 13 line. Yeah. Wait a minute. 2, 9 through 10. Yeah. 2 through 13. Sorry about that. Okay.
Right. And God spoke to Moses and said to him, I am the Lord, and I appeared to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob as El Shaddai. But in my name, the Lord was not known to them. And I also established my covenant with them to give them the land of Canaan, the land of their sojournings in which they sojourned. And also I myself have heard the groaning of the Israelites, whom the Egyptians enslaved, and I do remember my covenant. Therefore say to the Israelites, I am the Lord. I will take you out from under the burdens of Egypt, and I will rescue you from the bondage. I will redeem you with outstretched arms and with great retributions. I will take you to me as a people, and I will be your God, and you shall know that I am Lord, your God, who takes you out from under the burdens of Egypt. And I will bring you to the land that I raised my hand in pledge to give to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob, and I will give it to you as an inheritance. I am the Lord. And Moses spoke thus to the Israelites, but they did not heed Moses out of shortness of breath and hard bondage. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Come, speak to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, that he send off the Israelites from his land. And Moses spoke before the Lord, saying, Look, the Israelites need not heed me. How will Pharaoh heed me? I am uncircumcised of lips. And the Lord spoke to Moses and to Aaron, and he charged them with regarding the Israelites and regarding Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to bring out the Israelites from the land of Egypt.
Yoda?
I will make note that last week's parashah, when we first went into Exodus and Shemot, it says in chapter 4, line 31, the exact opposite. And the people were convinced when they heard that the Eternal had taken note of the Israelites and that God had seen their plight, and they bowed low in homage. What's with the editors here?
They
Is
were
that
on a break.
rhetorical? Is it different people, different time frame of the editing that you often point out, Yehuda?
Chapter set up this chapter. What's going on?
Keep us off balance. Keep us off balance. That's what living is. You have to have the positive and negative constantly fluttering.
But this is very important that it says the opposite thing.
Arnie?
So I was just trying to react to uncircumcised of lip. I'd heard various interpretations that Moses had a problem speaking. One Cheder teacher told me he had a hair lip, and another one told me it was from the test with the gold and the lead. He touched the fire and burnt his tongue. Any authoritative opinions on what an uncircumcised lip might mean?
I think it's telling that not one of the artists depicted Moses with a hair lip.
I don't
Cleft
know my
palate.
etymology that much. Oh, I'm sorry. I was just thinking the idea of being uncircumcised is saying, he was juvenile, he was naive, he hadn't been accustomed to public speaking. When you think technically you're uncircumcised when you're born, when you're just totally, a babe in the woods and naive. So I think that connotation kind of makes some sense, but it almost didn't matter what he said. It's the fact that immediately Moshe is saying he's not the right guy for the job, which of course we've already heard, and it's repeated over and over again. I think that's the point that's supposed to be important, because when you have a calling or whatever, or ultimately Hashem accommodated his concerns by bringing his brother in and so forth, but obviously there was some kind of destiny involved here, right?
Yeah. I mean, I agree. You know, and of course in the Tanakh, again, the call of a true prophet is often one that demurs their call. And certainly Moses is epitomizing that. I wonder also the fact that he's raised as an Egyptian and a royal Egyptian at that, that's part of his sense of being uncircumcised, you know, that he's not been around, you know, his indigenous people, his own people so much. So he was just, you know, he just had that kind of foreign aspect about him in relation to the Israelites.
That's a point that I've been thinking about too, is maybe other than expressing doubt in his own abilities and, you know, maybe self-esteem or whatever, like the personal part of like, can you choose someone else, not me, I'm not up to the task sort of attitude, is that he's saying, I am not of the people whose injustice I've seen. So I don't speak their language, right? They're not going to listen to me because I'm not speaking their language. So
Right.
I think then along the lines of what you said.
Yes, he's dressed in the finery. Why did the people listen to someone from the Egyptian court?
Dylan?
So going back, I just had another idea about Yehuda's point, and I was thinking about the temporalness. I was thinking about, because this is going to be mirrored in the desert, when the Israelites felt the burden, and oh, here's this hope, and they're all excited, yay, 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 you know, and then, but the second time it's mentioned, they were too tired, you know, they were too overburdened to pay attention, and so they said, you know, it's like, what have you done for me lately? So that's another subtle thing, but it keeps coming up, the whole idea of what the timing of all this and the flip-flopping all the time.
Yehuda, you have your hand up. Did you want to speak?
No, you cut out.
Oh.
So I have a question to ask of the group. That's very important that this is the first time that you say that we have Yud Hey, Vav Hey introduced into text. And, you know, Yud Hey, Vav Hey is basically renowned as the thing that we don't know how it's pronounced. So why is this introduced at this stage? That here we are at the beginning of this, you know, amazing story of the magical realism of the Jews and Pharaoh, and it starts by introducing us to a God who has no pronounceable name that we know of.
So, some scholars. Matan, if you have something from Alter that you want to read to us, that would be a good time right now. Is that specifically regarding what Yehuda's talking about? Where's Matan?
I looked at what Alter said about uncircumcised of lips.
Oh, okay. We'll come back to that in a second. But the relationship, so in the beginning, God establishes his relationship. He says, I've already made myself known to Abraham, not to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob separately. And now the establishment of a new relationship is a new revelation. In other words, I am bringing the past into the present, acknowledging the difference in the situation, and establishing a new relationship. So the newness of the name with its unknowableness is very significant here, because these chapters, you know, that are going to lead to the actual Exodus are the beginning of a relationship. And, you know, the whole thing that we're going to be talking about for this parashah next week is the idea that who is it that needs to be convinced more? What is the reticence and reluctance to leave Egypt? Is it really solely Pharaoh's meanness, or is it the unreadiness of the Israelites? So I see this as sort of a clean, you know, God saying, new chapter, I am yours now. I'm not just the, you know, don't take their word for this. Don't take Abraham's word. Or
Are you suggesting that the metaphor of having a name that is unknowable represents everything else that's not knowable?
I like that. It wasn't what I was suggesting, but I like that too. I'm suggesting that there's a new introduction to this is your relationship now. You are not just the descendants of the people to whom I've already revealed myself, but I will reveal myself to you too in a new and fresh way that might feel more relevant. I think that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, what
Also
you're saying is
remember,
it's a demarcation of a new chapter, because we're talking about what, 10 generations later, when all this happened, and we're assuming that the Israelites or the Hebrews as a group before and during slavery identified and had these stories passed down. But again, the game of telephone, things change. So I think what you're saying is very important, Aviva, especially since the revelation in Mount Sinai is going to be to everybody, So this is, and I'm also thinking more pragmatically in the future, in the upcoming chapters about, marking your doorways and all that. The notion is that those people, that generation right then, had to know that they were, like it was the true, they had to do their fact checking. And when they got the command to do this or this, that they recognized who it was coming from.
We might also suggest that the pronunciation of Yud He Vav He was known by the high priests until 70, when the temple was destroyed, because the high priest would go into the inner sanctum and pronounce the name of God. And after the inner sanctum and the whole temple itself was destroyed, also lost was the pronunciation. So there is a period of time here that goes from this point all the way to 70 CE, where at least the highest echelons knew the pronunciation.
Alan, and I have Alan, Arnie, and Sarah. Wow, great.
Taking into account what Ruth Ellen has frequently mentioned, and also David did just a moment ago about the one who wants the leadership role the least is the one who is the right one to choose. I wonder if this isn't a time for a miracle. If we have a God who is capable of doing so many things, is Moses saying, "Fix my voice, give me the silver-tongued orator's voice, and I'll be able to do all these things for you."
But that, Alan, is very significant what you're saying, because beware the silver-tongued orator. History has proven. So
good point.
I think that really historically that feels like the significance, because if Moses really had a speech impediment, or he had low self-esteem, or just plain old fear, or like I got better things to do with my life, any one of those are qualities that a leader has to get over in order to lead. If you already had a silver tongue, woe to the population whose brains you could mess with.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's very significant. I think that is actually one of the Moses is constantly overcoming something, because he's got that greater picture. He's already proven, I believe he's already proven that his sense of justice is existent. He sees it in his own people, who he doesn't even know are his own people. He sees injustice to the Egyptians. He sees injustice. That's the language he understands. So from that, for him to become a leader, there are lots of obstacles he has to overcome. And, a leader who cannot speak clearly, boy, that feels like a real obstacle, doesn't it?
Mm.
Arnie?
yeah, I think, it's almost like a setup that a magician would use. Here's the magic word, only I know the magic word and can perform these powerful things that are beyond human imagination. It's a setup in a way, and then again, remember the secret word is used later in the creation of the golem, because it's put into the body of clay and it becomes animate, right? So I think the lore continues even beyond what we were discussing earlier, Yehuda. And you know, it's good theater. It's just, creates an image you don't forget. And that's the important thing in storytelling.
Thank you, Sarah, and then Marilyn after that.
Well, I was thinking about the name, that they didn't know that he didn't have a name, a written name. Now he's making known a name. So I'm thinking that he's showing them another aspect of himself, and that is talk about miracles. The one miracle would be Moses getting his normal speech back. But I think another thing is that up to this point, we have not really seen God fulfilling this miracle of redeeming them. And so by telling him another aspect of his name, he's saying, you can trust me to fulfill this promise of redemption. That when I make a promise, I'm going to fulfill it. That's another aspect that we haven't seen so far in the Torah that we're about to see now and witness in Exodus.
Thank you, Marilyn. Oh, Marilyn, if you're speaking, you're muted. We can't hear you.
Thank
There
you. Moses also, he didn't just see injustice, but he acted. Like a lot of people will see something, but it doesn't cause them to move on it. But
Right.
that wasn't how Moses was. It caused him to have an empathic response. He was moved by it to do something.
Right.
I like that.
There's a famous quote, which is going to be the crux of a little bit later on in our reading, and I don't know who quoted it, but it's you can take the people out of Egypt, but you can't take the Egypt out of the people. Does anyone know where that comes from? In
A
any
cigarette commercial, I think.
But this is the beginning of that conversation, right? That is what God is saying. I have revealed myself to the ancestors by a different name. They don't know me by this name.
Right.
The beginning of this relationship, which requires human intermediary, is very significant because it is not about the miracles that God can perform or not. It is about the people having the faith in themselves, or whatever. This is the great transformation that's been happening through the book of Genesis, is the God concept of creator of all, and then the moving down toward people, and where the outcomes of people's behaviors are what end up causing trouble or joy, whatever. It's that
But also, if I can interrupt, if it's interesting that the people now, and I often think about this because, at my lowest points in life, that's when I really call out to Hashem, and this is what's happening right now. He's hearing the Hebrew people crying out and moaning about their enslavement, and so that's when he comes in with this aspect of fulfilling the covenant, so to speak. And I just wonder how often, that seems to be a theme throughout the Torah and the prophets, that, when things are at their low, but it doesn't always, obviously, but I think often, I just wonder how much that plays into this idea that we get an answer from God when we really need something to grasp onto.
Yeah.
But is there also some disappointment on Moses' end because the people didn't listen to him? They what did they say? They were too tired from working, but they didn't right away say, "Oh yes, okay, let's go, let's do it." I don't know if there's a sense of rejection by them, but it's certainly not the enthusiastic response that he was hoping for.
Then this goes on and on throughout the whole Exodus, right? Even out in the desert, it continues on. So maybe it's true that, a prophet isn't heard in his within his own people or his own hometown. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just real quickly, for once, I was going to say I'm falling into Alan's pattern of wondering, like, how did they logistically do this? Because if they're out in the fields, was it like the game of telephone or a phone chain? The timing of all this, we can tell that this narrative is, poeticized to some degree, in terms of how these messages actually got to the people and when. So again, I think it's more the notion of metaphorically what it means is what we've been talking about in terms of this transition from this dormancy during the time in Egypt back into an active moving forward toward the fulfillment of the original covenant with the next generations.
Vic?
Maybe they couldn't listen to him because they were so worn out.
Moses doesn't feel like he's part of the Jewish people. Moses has been raised Egyptian, and he just he's going to go to total strangers that he's got to deal with, and he's in an odd corner. You wouldn't be able to do it. I wouldn't be able to do that either. Go to some people that don't know me, and I don't know them, and then try to do something constructive.
Helen?
Just quickly, I don't know that I totally buy into that he didn't consider himself Jewish, because we know that Miriam suggested he be taken to be nursed by his own mother, or at least that's what we assume. We don't know how long that took place. And I think, again, part of Moshe's story is that he's a bridge. The fact that he has both sides of this to himself is what gives him that kind of like an extra insight, an extra edge, in addition to anything that you think is divinely enhanced.
I agree very strongly, because my theory of Moses definitely leans very hard into the universality of what Moses sees, and also the recognition of who he is. So that combination, and I think that's been the key in the historic, unfortunately now unraveling, relationship between American Jews and, through the social justice movements, because what that is lost now. I'm sorry to say, I really strongly feel like that everybody's putting blinders on. And it is exactly that the condition of not having liberty to have agency over your own life is a human condition
I
that is
agree.
not created by God. It's created by fill in the blank, right? Like autocratic leaders of any time in any place in history. It is a construct that we buy into.
Yeah.
And I think why Moses is the chosen one in this case, and why our story continues through Moses, is exactly that. He did not only see his own people suffering. The sense of justice was not unique because he didn't know who his own people were by the story. It's his sense of justice, and justice is not unique to one people over another. And that loss in current American history of that understanding across cultures is terrible. It's tragic.
So
Arnie?
you're saying you have eyes to see, you have ears to hear, but not always do people hear and see, which we see, under an autocratic. We see this happen in history. That's what you're saying, correct?
Yes, I'm saying that when when,
Right.
you know, when the
So do you,
concepts, when
so
the
are the ears,
universal,
are the ears blocked? I mean, is this another case of God, uh, uh, you know, like he stiffened Pharaoh's neck, right? Pharaoh's neck was stiffened. The Hebrews' ears were blocked. They didn't hear him. I mean, is this all a condition of God's unraveling the story, the history of the world? I mean, is this part of that?
When
okay, so this is a crux of the subject of this whole parashah. So we're going to come right back to this many more times. But I want to hear what Arnie and Yehuda have to say, because this is what's going on. So yeah, we'll
Yeah.
come back to it, Sarah.
Yeah.
So Arnie, then Yehuda, then Marilyn.
So I just wanted to say this is one of the greatest stories of all times. And it's remembered for 5,000 years because of the elements in the story. And the only thing that comes close in my mind is Mark Twain, Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's Court. Just think of how wonderful a story that is, but it doesn't even hold a candle to this story. Archaeological evidence doesn't support this story. God knows what they're going to find in the future, but so far we know, it just doesn't pan out. But yet we don't even need it. We don't care. I mean,
Right.
we're going to tell this story every year and just love it because it's just great storytelling. And that's my 2 cents.
Sorry, Marilyn, your hand was up. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, no.
Okay.
Change.
So Yehuda?
I want to cast this whole thing, and I am going to respectfully disagree with Vic. I believe that Moses was raised in both societies and therefore represents the metaphor of the Jew living in society, because the Jew lives amongst Jews and also lives amongst everybody else, and that Moses actually represents that. And we have no starker image than Moses being in both worlds and having to bridge both worlds to get some work done. And I think that that's one of the powerful things about the whole story is that, you've got the Jews on one hand and you've got everybody else on the other. Moses raised in both contexts. And as a person raised in both contexts, he has to negotiate, in effect, how do you actually live the right life?
Just real quick, because Yehuda made me think of that, is, well, here, it's a reincarnation. Is that not what Joseph also ended up doing? Living in the two. So it's kind of like a continuation of his story in a way, if you think of it that way.
But Joseph is not really given a task that he has to do and accomplish. Joseph is definitely, Joseph
Except
is a
to
very
the degree that he
unique,
always said,
important character.
don't blame your brothers. He didn't blame the brothers because he had a sense all along that he was following what Hashem had planned when he was thrown into slavery in the first place. I just, all of a sudden, I just saw those parallels though, because he became a prince of Egypt as well, taken from the
I
Disney.
agree. I think it stands out, that's very
The more
similar.
we read this, we see these things. It's just the same as all brother against brother, starting with Cain and Abel, and then when you start to really see what emerges when you really look are these several overreaching themes that go to the crux of what it is to be a human being and, get along with your fellow man.
I'm sorry, Marilyn, I didn't hear what you were saying.
Yeah, I was agreeing that I see that parallel too. Joseph came to my mind too. I think that the people that are chosen or that are highlighted in these stories, that there's some specific qualities, like they're not, you know, I mean, they're everyday man, but they're also uniquely, I mean, there's a highlight on their lives because of how they did what they did. You know, there's something about how they conducted themselves or in certain circumstances that is the parallel or the parable for how we're supposed to live. What's or not, or not. You know, those stories are also to tell us or to show us how not to do things, so as not to get in trouble. And you know, all the people that we read about that are doing these things to bring the people out or protect the people or however it works, they have this, I mean, I hate to call it a mission, but they seem to have a calling or a mission, or in some way they're in circumstances where they have the ability to be, you know, a way for the people to survive, to continue on, because they do things that are for the continuation and the betterment of the entire people.
Would you
So
mind if I added not just how to live, but also how to lead?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a quality that they have that can be tended by, you know, God the gardener, you know, to bring those aspects of their personality out for the good of everyone.
But that's my question overriding all of this. Is this a human thing, or is this God the gardener, as you say, you know, putting on his play? That to me is the real question. Where is the energy coming from that's sort of directing the flow of all of this and
Well,
bringing people forth at a certain specific time and turning off people's ears at another time and making them stiff-necked? But the right question, you know, to
Sarah,
all. Yeah. Well, if I knew the answer, I'd be.
I
I
know the answer. I know the answer.
yeah, me. Go ahead, Aviva, answer.
I know,
It's the
of
beginning
course.
of the great, it's the beginning of the great collaboration. Here we are leading up to the idea of the covenant. That is exactly it. It is not one or the other. It is not the hand of God directing everything that happens on
Mhm.
earth. It is the constant reminder of what humans are capable of
I
all the
you said
Yeah.
time
that.
throughout the story. And only when people internalize that can they find promise in any land. I mean, that's the great story. The great
Mhm.
story is the universal story. It's not unique to the Israelites. All people kept in a narrow, tamped down situation
I'm gonna
cannot
be.
achieve potential. I mean, it's basic Maslow in a way.
I mean,
Yeah,
exactly
but
too.
to you, but
Mizraim means the narrow place. You know, that's not to be overlooked. That's where they were.
and do you know how many people would disagree with you on that, Aviva?
Bring
This
them
is the
on.
hand of God, my dear.
Bring
Well,
them
it isn't
on.
not. It isn't not, but it isn't only.
Well, but that's too wishy-washy. Or could it be both? I don't know.
Why
I
not?
think
That's the
I
that's the
kind
covenant, Sarah. That
Yes.
is the covenant.
Yes.
The covenant is the collaboration. It's the great collaboration.
yeah, yeah. But does it really exist, or is it humans? You know, I
Well,
mean,
okay,
No,
so
don't you
let's
believe in
just say, okay,
miracles?
so
all right. Well,
we
I
have
mean, I didn't. Okay, okay, go ahead.
we have to read this parashah because
Yeah.
this is, I believe, what the dialogue with all the examples is. Do you believe in the God who can make a snake turn into a stick?
I don't
Or
believe in somebody up there directing traffic, but
okay,
I think there's a certain universal energy or whatever created everything. I mean, this is a very deep philosophical question that I don't think anybody has the answer to, really. But it makes me think when we're reading all of these things, this is the question that I keep getting back to. It's like the core of everything that's written in the Torah.
I agree, and I would be very worried about someone who has the exact answer. I would be disinclined to listen to them. But I do want to hear
But
Arnie's.
I
But, you know,
I have
but-
the answer. I
But there,
have it.
we do believe in miracles, however. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, there is a certain element to all the
only that-
stories, especially
And not
the
only that, but we're reading about Abraham talking to God, and God's telling him where to go and do, and you know, sacrifice my son, my kid, and
well,
all
that
of
one.
this stuff. I mean,
Listen,
it within the story itself.
I want to give
As
Arnie. I want to give
yeah,
Arnie the
Arnie, go
floor.
ahead. I'll be quiet. I started trouble. I always start trouble.
I think we're here for God's amusement. You know, it's that simple. You know, why should he interfere all the time when we're always screwing things up? And, you know, occasionally he might come to our aid, but why? I mean,
Funny. Why?
so much
Ruth
more
Ellen,
amusing.
Ruth
Yeah.
Ellen, can you put the name of the commentary, the headline of the commentary, so people can look it up later? Because he's got lots of commentaries. Okay, you're muted. You're muted. Just put it in the chat, and then I can write it down and look at it later. Okay, Marilyn, and then we're moving on.
Okay, the collaboration part is the part that I don't think we should forget, because it appears to me, and I think it's written too. I mean, God desires that we be in fellowship or collaboration with him. He doesn't want to do it all for us. He doesn't want to plot it out like that. On the other hand, there's a covenant and there's a way, because when we were traveling out of Egypt and we were, you know, going past all the groups of other people, etc., God was leading us to be together and to form the people, to form the Jewish people eventually. That was something that he was doing intentionally. Now, that didn't happen by accident. At least I don't think so. So I think we have to look at the intentionality of that, even though it might not have had a fully formed outcome, like where every bit was seen in advance, although it could have been, but I'm not saying it was. But God, and he wanted us to be his people, which, you know, it's like you want your kids in fellowship or relationship with you. You don't want to have them leave at 18 and never hear from them again. You know, that's not how we're made, I don't think.
All right. I love this. Okay, who's gotten a lot of breath? Because we're going to read through 7:7. So it's not.
I'll read.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
These are the heads of their fathers' houses, the sons of Reuben, Israel's firstborn, Enoch and Palu, Hezron and Carmi. These are the clans of Reuben. And the sons of Simeon, Jemuel and Jamin and Ohad and Jachin and Zohar and Saul, son of the Canaanite woman. These are the clans of Simeon. And these are the names of the sons of Levi according to their lineage, Gershon and Kohath and Merari. And the years of the life of Levi were 137 years. The sons of Gershon, Libni and Shimei, according to their clans. I had to get stuff out of the way. And the sons of Kohath, Amram and Issachar and Hebron and Uziel. And the years of the life of Kohath were 133 years. And the sons of Merari, Mali and Mushi. These are the clans of the Levite according to their lineage. And Amram took as wife Jochebed, his aunt, and she bore him Aaron and Moses. And the years of the life of Amram were 137 years. And the sons of Issachar, Korah and Nepheg and Zichri. And the sons of Uziel, Mishael and Elzaphan and Sithri. And Aaron took him Elisheba, daughter of Aminadab, sister of Nashon, as wife, and she bore him Nadab and Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. The sons of Korah, Asir and Elkanah and Abiasaph, these are the clans of the Korahite. And Eleazar, son of Aaron, had taken him a wife from the daughters of Putiel, and she bore him Phinehas. These are the heads of the fathers of the Levites according to their clans. And it was the very Aaron and Moses to whom the Lord said, bring out the Israelites from the land of Egypt in their battalions. It was they who were speaking to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to bring out the Israelites from Egypt, the very Moses and Aaron. And it happened on the day the Lord spoke to Moses in the land of Egypt. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, I am the Lord, speak to the Pharaoh, king of Egypt, all that I speak to you. And Moses said before the Lord, look, I am uncircumcised of lips, and how will Pharaoh heed me? And the Lord said to Moses, see, I have set you as a god to Pharaoh, and Aaron your brother will be your prophet. You it is who will speak all that I charge you, and Aaron your brother will speak to Pharaoh, and he will send off the Israelites from his land. And I, on my part, shall harden Pharaoh's heart, and that I may multiply my signs and my portents in the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh will not heed you, and I shall set my hand against Egypt, and I shall bring out my battalions, my people, the Israelites, from the land of Egypt with great retributions, that the Egyptians may know that I am the Lord when I stretch out my hand over Egypt and bring out the Israelites from their midst. And Moses and Aaron with him did as the Lord had charged, thus did they do. And Moses was 80 years old, and Aaron was 83 years old when they spoke to Pharaoh. And the Lord, okay.
Yeah. Yes, that's where I wanted to stop. Thank you. Oh, David had to leave. Too bad.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so we had the lineage kind of leading us to who's who and some of the rest of the story that will unfold. The genealogies are complex, but I'll address a couple of things as we go on. But here we go. This is the, what is it? Yeah, here we go. Ends with, and Moshe and Aharon did as God told them. So they are now a team. And they're going to be an inseparable team for a very long time. So in a way, God addresses Moses's main complaint in how are people going to listen to me when I can't speak properly? So I was like, okay, here you go. Your brother Aaron will speak for you. Go ahead, Ruth Ellen. And you.
Well, again, just because you said that, and it popped into my head. I think it's significant. This may be the first time in our story where we have two brothers who are not at odds with each other. I mean, they have their little spats, but like you use the word team, and that should have been very obvious from the beginning, but I never really thought about that. That's a break. Anytime there's, like a flip like that, you got to look at it. And also that's part of the humility also, to say that it can't be one person. It's sort of like the beginning of It Takes a Village.
Yeah, they were brothers, but they weren't raised together. So they really didn't have all that time to, build
Maybe.
up the enmity, right?
But the other interesting is when Hashem says, Moshe after the burning bush, go to your brother. We never hear anything about Aaron pushing back on that, So that implies maybe that's foreshadowing why he was destined to be the high priest, because he also had some, even though it's not enumerated the same way in the story written down, that he must have had a sense of this destiny, so to speak.
I think Aaron traditionally was thought of as a peacemaker. And as a peacemaker, he was going to be agreeable. That's why he let the golden calf happen. He was a peacemaker. The people want this, fine.
Why is the genealogy stuck right in here? Is
genealogy, I don't have a great explanation, except that it brings us to the line of the Levites, essentially.
Yeah, okay.
It establishes that.
I was going to say, is this to establish Moses and Aaron, and so that's the whole reason. And
there is no whole reason, but
right. And if, as Arnie said, there's no proof that any of this even happened, why, all of a sudden they stick a whole genealogy in there?
Alan?
Every time they stick
Well-
that in, and they've repeated it, but it's not the whole thing, I always think that for the people of the time, through the oral history or whatever, it's a way of reinforcing the legitimacy of,
Of the
you know,
story.
it's a preface, the legitimacy of these actors to be in the positions of change agents, you know, in the story. So, that's what I think. Thank you. Sorry,
Alan?
Ellen.
No, that's okay. I thought you had your hand up earlier anyway. So this is one of those things where every time we read it, something new jumps out, and I think of them like Easter eggs, and I realize that's not a very pacific way to talk about this. But there was a line in the passages that Ruth Ellen just read, that the Egyptians shall know that I am God. And meantime, Moses has already told him, or said, look, we're having problems with the people believing in you. But here, the point is made that it's important that the Egyptians believe as well, or recognize the power of God. And I thought that's an interesting element to include in there. That it's not God is saying, I'm not for just these people. I'm all powerful for all people. Or is that what's being said?
Well, the whole concept of the plagues, if you will, which is not a very good word, but the whole concept of the plagues and the delaying, like God hardens Pharaoh's heart, etc. There's a school of thought that says this is really all about the Israelites. They're not ready. And what they're not ready about is that Pharaoh is like a god, right? And they're
Especially in his
Yeah.
own mind.
in his own mind and in his people's mind.
Yeah.
So it's the establishing that Pharaoh is not
Mhm,
a god.
mhm.
And,
I
unfortunately, next week we have, unfortunately, listen to me. Unfortunately, next week we have services. We won't be able to. So I'll bring it into the discussion a little bit today. But the plagues seem to be not just to bring down Pharaoh and break his spirit so he says, okay, take him already, get him out of my face. It's less about that. It's about the Israelites realizing that Pharaoh is not God.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a roundabout. It always kind of circles back to that, because that's the real reluctance turns out to be, as we will learn later on, that the Israelites don't know what they're getting into and have no particular way to understand that, that there's a greater plan. They're just in the moment. Ruth Ellen, go ahead. Unmute.
Well, yeah, I mean, I'm just blown away by Rabbi Sachs this week. So, because the other one that I read, I don't know if you did, is the one they chose for this year. And Arnie will like this. He even mentioned it. I love this notion that he says that in that time period, magic was to faith like technology is to religion now. That's how they explain the unexplainable. And his whole point is the first 5 plagues were things that Pharaoh's sorcerers, whatever they called them, wizards could replicate somehow. And so that was and when they said it had to be the finger of God, he's saying that's their way of saying anything that couldn't be explained by their level of understanding of science and the physical world at that point. The only explanation was that it had to be from a deity.
Mhm.
And then he goes on in history to say is that the more we understand scientifically, it seems that there should be less of a need for religion, which is the argument of the secularists that he's talking about. But he says you also have to know how to use that technology for the right purposes. And so, of course, that hit me immediately. I'm thinking of like Elon Musk is the modern day, Pharaoh. It's just it's these parallels are just right out there in front of you. So to the degree you talk about the Egyptians had to be convinced, and the Israelites, it was like the whole civilizations had to re-understand their refocus their understanding of what was divine and what wasn't, and also the role of human beings in using whatever gifts they have or whatever gifts they see miracles coming from God to promote well-being and not for their own selfish ends, which is the way of the world mostly, right?
Thank you. Arnie?
Well, I have a question for anyone who has an answer. What was the Jews' religious life back then? They didn't have Torah, they didn't have prayer books, they didn't have anything. Do we know anything about their religious life?
Yehuda?
The Noahide laws were already known.
What, the stuff you cover your car seats with?
No, not.
It's Noahide. Yes.
Noahide.
Okay, I misheard you.
Yeah.
And the Noahide laws basically were the laws without the ones about God.
So
they
they're
all-
all vegetarians.
No,
And also
Well,
there's
the
No, they
Noah
ate
law,
lamb. They ate lamb. We know that from the
no,
lunch,
that ended
the
with
luncheon there.
wait, there's also a distinction that could be made between religious and spiritual. And there needs to be, if we're going to actually discuss this, in, for highlighting those aspects, because they're not identical.
But I think Arnie's asking a specific question.
The-
What
the
does the
veg-
literature say? What defined the Bnei Israel, the Israelites, as a different people? What did they believe in?
circumcision.
No,
Circumcision for one.
yeah, but that was just an
Yeah,
outward manifestation
A-
of
a-
the fact that something.
But that's a practice.
but that hadn't been established yet. That's going to be established later as a sign of the covenant.
I don't
So
know.
I think Arnie's got a really interesting question because we know from what's written in the Torah that the leaders, or at least the progenitors of this people, were informed of the presence of God and guided in this way. But was that transmitted to the rest of the people? Were several generations gone past those original conversations? So how were they talked about at all? Were they part of their lives? I think that's left to interpretation.
Well, they believed in one God. That's different than all the other people had various gods, pagan gods.
Did
That's
they?
what kept them
Did they?
separate.
Then why did it have to be proved to them through this
Okay,
whole?
that's the point, Alan.
Because
The
they
point
got
is
weak.
that Alan and Arnie, and then I'm going to call them Ruth, Ellen, and Vic.
Wait, somebody's got
point-
something on, Aviva. Like I keep hearing somebody got a radio or something on in the background.
I'm going to turn myself off. I don't hear anything here, but in case there.
Is this better right now, Marilyn?
Yeah.
Okay, so that
Thank you.
Arnie's question is an excellent question because we don't actually have that documented. I think that that's the point of this parashah, starting with the idea that God creates a new name for a new time, because now is the time to extend the covenant to an entire people.
Mhm,
And so
mhm.
the first thing that happens after establishing that now I'm going by a new name is not I'm going to prove to you who I am, but first I'm going to prove to you who's not God. And that in this case is Pharaoh. So I think it's a very good question. And I'm going to do a deep dive into it because I've thought about it often, but I've always thought that the ambiguity of it is the beginning of the choosing a covenantal people. Who was first? Was it Yehuda or Vic? Oh, actually, we haven't heard Vic. Why don't you go, and then we'll call on Yehuda and Ruth Ellen.
Well, the Egyptians, of course, had that Egyptian that you see, mummies and all that, and the Jews probably remember what the story, okay, of Abraham
Right.
and like that, and now's the time to go it on your, now's the time to go it on your own.
Right.
It's And then especially this particular Pharaoh is a weak Pharaoh. You can get by it, easily.
Weak in some ways, but he also managed to enslave a people. So powerful in some ways. But yeah, that's the.
Probably the enslaving was the guy before him. He was a strong king, Pharaoh.
It's
that
interesting,
Yehuda
he
knows
also had
Ellen.
Moses in his name. He was Moses, right?
Mhm.
No, true.
And yeah, and not only that, part of that is the god of writing, actually. Thought, and he had that as part of the name too, because he could write.
I think
He
it's
was
a
probably
combination
the
of
only Jew
being in the
that could
text and
write.
not in the text. Remember, it says there arose a Pharaoh who did not remember. It doesn't say anything about the Jews not remembering their own history. And I think that's implicit between the lines. The Jews remembered their own history. They have a history. That oral history is passed forward, and they knew it. And they were successful. They look living under the Noahide laws, which don't include all the stuff about God. The first three led them to be tremendously successful because that was moral. The way they lived with the Noahide laws are a moral and ethical code. And I think that leads to success.
I forget who else, Ruth Ellen, go ahead.
Yes, I'll build on what Yehuda said to Arnie's point. I think we often get into this problem where, well, how did they, if there wasn't a temple, we're imposing the ritual that we know now onto these earlier time. And this also brings one of the classic questions to anti-Semitism and all that right now, because nations are generally defined by location, by the place of origin. So the Hebrews recognized themselves as Hebrews. They were in Goshen. They lived separately. They knew they came from another tribe. They didn't have the law codified, but like Yehuda was saying, in terms of their ancestry and what was important, and the notion of a covenant would certainly be passed down from one generation to the next. So by the time they were enslaved, they still were identifying themselves as a separate group.
And that's what
Then,
I'm saying. And they
yeah,
believed in one God, which was
well,
which was
I don't know if they,
different.
well,
Well,
they
look,
believe
I mean, if
that their forefathers made a covenant with the eternal God. So to
they
some
knew
degree, yes.
Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob and Joseph, that was handed down. That's got to be a main staple of the oral, whatever the belief.
That didn't involve any particular ritual
I'm not saying
following
it did.
laws
I'm
or
saying
whatever. Right,
no.
except in terms of circumcision, I don't agree with Alan either. I don't know where he's getting that from. I think that is one of the things that distinguish them. And the fact that this was before the law, that Moshe's wife said there was a problem because the kids weren't circumcised, things like that. And then it's just last week when I was skimming through the parsha about Moshe as a baby, some of the rabbis are talking about that there were certain people in history they think were born circumcised, which sounds too much like an immaculate conception to me. But it was, this extra, can't think of the word, but paranormal kind of thing going on. So I think that existed, and that's why we have this core. When we took an ethnicity, a group of people from the same lineage, and then they became not only a nation based on a place, which we never really had, but on an idea and a faith. And that is one of the things that I think is more distinctive about Jews in the world, and also makes them a target than almost any other group that I can think of. Okay, go ahead. What do you?
Yehuda has his hand up.
Yeah,
Oh, so
Yehuda,
does
then Ellen.
Alan.
Yeah, Yehuda, then Ellen, thank you.
I've definitely been building out this new epiphany I had about how we use the word Elohim. And I think that one of the things that evolves and comes out of this is that the transition that takes place from just following the seven Noahide laws to also accepting God as a community of Israel includes the understanding that people did have their own understanding of what God was, but it was unique to them. And what they had to accept at Sinai was that was okay that they had their own understanding, because all of those understandings comprised what the community's understanding of God was. And that's a very sophisticated thing, because it's not one understanding of God, because if we're made in the image of God, well, God is everything. So therefore, every single understanding of God ends up being okay. And what becomes okay as a community of Israel, which makes it Jews so unique, is that we accept that as that we each have our own images of God, and they all comprise God, and we do it as a community. And the covenant was accepted at Sinai as a community, that we have this common understanding that we each have our own thing going on, and they're all okay. That's sort of sophisticated, but I don't think that any other group in the world has ever taken that on like we have, and I assign it to what happened at Sinai.
Thank you. Alan, and then Ruth Ellen.
The whole discussion has led me to a different place, and that is maybe an answer to the question of why Moses. Because we've asked that of all of them. We have asked that of Abraham. We asked that why Moses. And I'm thinking what's being set up is that the Egyptians, and in particular one Egyptian, the Pharaoh, have to be convinced to change their path because of this godly command. But can anybody just get in the door? No. But somebody who was raised in the palace would be recognized at the door. And maybe that was the reason that Moses was the right choice, that there wasn't somebody from the enslaved people, but somebody who had left and gone and had another life, but knew the way to get into the palace, to make these declarations and these demands of Pharaoh. Because I don't think just anybody, off the street in Goshen could have gotten there and gotten past the guards at the front door.
That's definitely part of the story, for sure.
I agree completely with what you're saying, Alan.
Yeah.
Okay, stop. Sorry.
Of course, that also brings up the idea of which came first, the chicken or the egg. I mean, was Moshe the one who survived and was picked out by the Pharaoh's daughter because Hashem already had something in mind for him? But that's not what I was going to say. Also, to Yehuda's point, that's something I come back to all along, because my whole life, I mean, since Hebrew school and all that, it didn't hit me until my husband brought it to my attention, and I've talked about this with you, that we read, again, going back to even talking about having a new name, and the children of Israel recognized him. At this point, everyone heard God, and they saw the image, they saw the cloud, until they got scared, and when Hashem was going to give up on them altogether. They all were having the same experience that Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob had when Hashem said, I came of Abraham, of Isaac, of Jacob. We had a communal experience and a communal understanding. So to some degree, every individual is going to, based on their traits and their attributes and what they're good at, is going to interpret in their own way, but there was still a common foundation of a communication directly with Hashem. That's what we've lost. And in modern times, that is what's led to a lot of derision and division, not only between religions, but within the Jewish people. And that all has to do with the notion of free will or not. Are we going to make the habits? Are we going to attend every day and put our attention on what it means to be human and to live according to the 10 Commandments, seek justice into its innermost parts or whatever. And when we don't do that, that's where we fall into this toil and trouble that we have. Okay.
Arnie?
I just wanted to circle back to my original question about their religious practices. And I just flashed on them creating the golden calf. So did that just come out of nowhere, or were they already doing that? And it was
Uh-huh.
a familiar practice, you know? And, Aaron, who was the big macher, kind of headed up, the creation of that too, organizing it and stuff. So there might have been some of that going on.
I agree with you, Arnie. I think there was some of that going on. We see the little household gods that people carry. Who had one? Rachel? Did she have it? Yeah, she had one of those carried on her camel or whatever. And
She stole it.
yeah, I'm just saying it existed.
Yeah, okay.
It's uh this kind of idolatry seeps in through the culture. I I mean you could say that about the Greco culture. A lot of Jews became very Greek at one, you could say that about Jews going to India and dancing around Shiva. I don't know. But anyway, I think you're right that it seeps in. We're warned about it
And that's
throughout.
to Aviva's point before in a
Yeah.
previous
Yeah.
parsha, where she said, "Thou shalt not have any God before me."
Mm-hmm.
Is a
Right,
big
exactly.
distinction,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But I think that was there at that time. Yeah.
I
I think
think that that's the crux of the story. That is,
some
I mean, you are going to it, whatever their practices were in Egypt, the point was that they had not yet understood the concept of a universal God.
from
That
the beginning. I mean,
and
God
in
was saying,
all
I am your
right,
God. I am your God over and over again. And they didn't get it. I mean,
Well,
it took
some
a
of them
while.
did, obviously, some of them
Yeah,
did.
it took a while.
but the
Well,
idea
well,
is
look at
to have
slavery
a
in the United States.
Sorry,
There.
Vic.
hold on. I want to hear Vic. Vic, please speak.
I'm
Look
saying
at
Vic.
look at slavery in the United States. What did those guys turn to? That's what we would have. That kind of thing is what we would have been exposed to. So Moses had to be somebody really different to be able to make you know to change that.
Well, it was hard for him. Nobody, I mean, it's not like people just listened to him right away.
Nobody listened to him right away,
Yeah.
and
That's good. Getting back to my point about suffering, do we have to really be like suffering in order to get it?
Go
Yeah,
ahead,
there
Ruth.
was all these slave laws that, the laws of Lovell, right, and how to treat slaves. Jews had slaves too, So,
But they
and
had laws
in
about how
this,
to treat them.
right, in the South rationalized using the Bible to keep slaves. They go, oh, look, it's in the Bible. It's fine.
Yeah,
You can
yeah,
have slaves.
yeah.
Ruth Ellen.
Well, to Arnie's point again, one of the things I think, two things. Back in Egypt, of course, they were assimilated to some degree. They were inculcated in this other culture, whether it was from their forefathers or not, so they were familiar with it. And then it's the idea of when human beings, when they have fear. When did they come to the golden calf again? When they had fear that God had forsaken them and it took too long for Moshe to come back. So they regress back into these base instincts that do not that preclude paying attention and being mentioned, so to speak. And this is where that the Rabbi Sachs story that I talked about again, he said, we say that people, they often say, or one of the Greek philosophers says that all human beings, or no, philosopher, I forgot which one, all human beings are born free and then the shackles are placed upon them. He gives that quote. It's from a Enlightenment philosopher. I can't remember who right now, but he says it's actually the other way around, because when you're born into this world and you're totally dependent on other people, you get raised into a way of thinking of what's around you, and you can't have the opportunity to break out of that until you have some agency of your own. So if you don't have that, you don't get the the opportunities to grow that way. And then he brought it into neuroscience, which is what I love too, is because the idea of forming habits. So he uses it to describe why the notion of Pharaoh's heart being hardened. We talked about this the other time too, that the Hebrew word really means he strengthened. So I interpret that to mean he strengthened his resolve to not let the Jews go. But Rabbi Sachs's point is that the first 5 plagues, it was all him. And when it says Hashem hardened his heart for the 6th through 10th, what he was saying is that Pharaoh was not thinking things through. He was it reminds me of a certain person in the White House right now, acting on his instincts and the habits that he had created all along. And so he got more entrenched in saying no, 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 because he had been in the habit of saying no, no, no the first 5 times, things like that. So it really gets down to like a shift in the psychological and neurological state of the individuals involved. So
Let's go to Sarah, and then I'm going to recommend we do some storytelling, just reading.
So to me, it sounds to me like, back to this question of having 2 natures, that we have the Yetzirah and no, what's it called? Yeah, the Yetzirah.
Yetzer Hara and Yetzer HaTov.
Yeah, Yetzirah and Yetzer HaTov. Thank you, Viva. And those 2 are always battling each other, which is why probably at this point, once they leave Egypt, Moses has to give them through Hashem laws to live by, because there's always these 2 inclinations going at each other in the human being.
All right. So I'm going to give us a guideline as we read through the first few of we're going to do, Alan, a fairly decent reading. We're going to go through 8:11. So we don't have to go that far, and I'll tell you where to stop. But I'm going to recommend that with each plague, that each of us think about one thing about the plague that is Pharaoh related and one thing that is Israelite related. In other words, what is the plague trying to tell Pharaoh, and what is the plague trying to tell the Israelites at the same time, simultaneously, as we read through a bunch of these plagues. So whoever's got a lot of breath, start us off. You get tired, say so, and we'll move to someone else.
I could do it.
Sure.
And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, saying, should Pharaoh speak to you, saying, give you a portent, you shall say to Aaron, take your staff and fling it down before Pharaoh, let it become a serpent. And Moses and Aaron with him came to Pharaoh, and they did as the Lord had charged. And Aaron flung down his staff before Pharaoh and before his servants, and it became a serpent. And Pharaoh too called for his sages and sorcerers, and they too the soothsayers of Egypt, and did thus with their spells. And each flung down his staff, and they became serpents, and Aaron's staff swallowed their staffs. And Pharaoh's heart toughened, and he did not heed them, just as the Lord had spoken. And the Lord said to Moses, Pharaoh's heart is hard. He refuses to send off the people. Go to Pharaoh in the morning. Look, he will be going out to the water, and you shall be poised to meet him on the bank of the Nile. And the staff that turned into a snake you shall take in your hand, and you shall say to him, the Lord, God of the Hebrews, sent me to you, saying, send off my people, that they may worship me in the wilderness. And look, you have not heeded us as yet. Thus said the Lord, by this shall you know that I am the Lord. Look, I am about to strike with my staff in my hand on the water. That is the Nile, and it will turn into blood. And the fish that are in the Nile will die, and the Nile will stink, and the Egyptians will not be able to drink the water from the Nile. And the Lord said to Moses, say to Aaron, take your staff and stretch it out your hand over the waters of Egypt, and over their rivers, and over the Nile channels, and over their ponds, and over all the gatherings of their waters, that they may become blood. And there shall be blood in the land of Egypt, and in the trees, and in the stones. And Moses and Aaron did thus as the Lord had charged. And he raised the staff and struck the water that was in the Nile before the eyes of the Pharaoh and the eyes of his servants, and all the water that was in the Nile turned to blood. And the fish that were in the Nile died, and the Nile stunk, and the Egyptians could not drink water from the Nile, and the blood was in all the land of Egypt. And the soothsayers of Egypt did thus with their spells. And Pharaoh's heart toughened, did not heed them. And just as the Lord had spoken, and Pharaoh turned and came into his house, this too he did not take to heart. And all of Egypt dug round the Nile to water to drink, for they could not drink the water of the Nile. And for 7 days passed after the Lord struck the Nile. And the Lord said to Moses, come to Pharaoh, and you shall say to him, thus said the Lord, send off my people that may worship me. And if you should refuse to send them off, look, I am about to scourge all your region with frogs. And the Nile will swim with frogs. They will come up and come into your house and into your bedchambers, into your couch, into your servant's house, and upon your people, into your ovens, and into your kneading pans, and upon you and upon your people, and upon all the slaves, the frogs will come up. And the Lord said to Moses, say to Aaron, stretch out your hand and your staff over the rivers, over the Nile channels, over the ponds, bring up the frogs over the land of Egypt. And Aaron stretched out his hand over the waters of Egypt, and the frogs came up and covered the land of Egypt. And the soothsayers did thus with their spells, and brought up frogs over the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh called to Moses and Aaron and said, entreat the Lord that he take away the frogs from me and from my people, and I shall send off the people, they may sacrifice to the Lord. And Moses said to Pharaoh, you may vaunt over me as for when I shall entreat you, and for the servants and for your people, to cut off the frogs from you in your houses. Only in the Nile will they remain. And he said, for tomorrow, and he said, as you have spoken, so that you may know there is none like the Lord our God. And the frogs will turn away from you, from your houses, from your servants, and from your people. Only in the Nile will they remain. And Moses and Aaron with him went from the Pharaoh's presence, and Moses cried out to the Lord concerning the frogs he had put upon Pharaoh. And the Lord did according to Moses' word, and the frogs died out of the houses, and out of the courtyards, and out of the fields. And they piled them up in heaps upon heap on the land, and the land stank. And the Pharaoh saw that there was relief, and he hardened his heart, and he did not heed them, as the Lord had spoken.
Whew, thank you.
Yeah,
Oh,
Great reading.
thanks.
very dramatic.
So they had
has a second
cookies
already.
back then, huh?
And who brought the cookies? God or some rich person who wanted the beautiful sound of trumpets around them?
It was most likely nurserymen bringing in plants that weren't inspected.
Or that. So who really brought the cookies? God?
I always see this as part of nature too, these plagues, like frogs eat things like lice come after frogs. And someone said to me that the frogs were of no use, but why did God use the frogs? Because they really are not, they don't play any role in nature, is what this person said. And I disagree with that. I think they play a role in nature. They eat other bugs and keep some kind of harmony. And it's interesting to me that lice come after frogs. So, these plagues, I think one has an effect on the next plague in nature. I could see that, like the blood in the Nile, that would affect all living creatures around the Nile, and so on and so forth. It's interesting to me to look at it from a nature point of view.
I have Yehuda, Alan, Arnie, and I thought Ruth Ellen. Okay, so you can, yeah, I've got it written down. I will go in this order. Yehuda, go ahead.
Considering that for the most part, the imagery of the storytelling is visual, I think it's unique that there is this one additional sense that is drawn out, and that's the stink.
Mhm.
And I think that given that visual imagery is a hard thing to transfer through the ages, but not the stink. We all know how things smell when they rot, when life rots. And I think there's unique brilliance in putting that one sense into the writing because we get it. We, even if we can't imagine the whole rest of the story, we can definitely imagine the stink.
Absolutely.
Alan?
I have an observation and then also a question, but the observation is I think we have here the first example of God's sense of humor. Because if you can imagine the negotiation that might have taken place if he had said before, this is what I'm going to do. And Moses could say, frogs? Give us alligators. Give us something that's really got some heft. Frogs? Are you kidding me? But that's the observation. The question I have is, what about the Hebrews? It said in the entire land of Egypt, and that would include Goshen, where the people were living. Were they protected? There's no indication here that they were protected from this, or they
Actually,
had
there
source
is.
of water.
There actually
a lot
is,
of
and it
literature.
actually
Yeah.
references it through the writing that area is not affected.
Yeah.
That's been documented in the commentaries that it was uh, likely that it did not include the area
Yeah.
for the Israelites, the best land. But good point, because the one that will come, the later ones, they were not protected from. That's why
And had to take steps in order to protect themselves from it. Yes.
Arnie, go ahead.
So I once heard this scientific explanation of the plagues, and it was somewhat corroborated that there was a huge volcanic eruption somewhere in Europe. I can't remember, Italy maybe or something. The blood was actually red algae that occurred. It was the first thing, and the red algae actually killed the frogs, and brought them out of the water, and all the other plagues followed as a result of this volcanic eruption. So it kind of it's interesting, and it's a possibility, of course, but
Mount Etna.
it could have been whatever, but all of it's true. What you said about stink, Yehuda, it's that's why you bake cookies when you're doing an open house. It it really is one of those senses that makes people remember things. The sense of smell.
This is home.
Yeah.
All right, I think I had Ruth Ellen. Yes, go ahead.
Again, I learned something from Rabbi Sachs that I would not have known. Important, and I loved how he talked about the first two plagues. So the blood, he was making the reference. Why were these important? And the frogs also, because he was flipping on its ear what Pharaoh had tried to do to get rid of the Jews, which was try to drown them in the Nile. So here you take the lifeblood, and the Nile was considered almost like a god because there they were in this rich, fertile crescent where the rest was desert, And so to take what had been life-giving in the water and turn it into blood, and then it's reverse. And the second thing that I didn't know is that the frogs were a symbol of fertility. for the Egyptians. So there, God's joke, according to Rabbi Sachs, is of course the notion that the midwives. So it was, I guess, it was a symbol like for Egyptian midwives as well in terms of successfully bringing new life into the world. So it flips, and then it recognizes that it was the midwives who foiled Pharaoh's first plan because they didn't follow his instructions. So I really think that's kind of fascinating because the Rabbi Sachs calls it a sort of satire, that's but an irony, I guess, in there, but that it wouldn't have been lost on the Pharaoh because these were symbols that were in their religious lexicon.
And
Go ahead, Marilyn.
yeah, it's interesting. I have a friend, she's not Jewish, and she has a fixation, a collection of frogs. Like, she just collects them in all different forms, not live ones, of course, and it's so interesting to think about because I mean, I wouldn't want one of those things hanging around in my house because of my orientation, but she thinks that they're great. And it's just funny because, it's how you grow up and what you take on to carry into adulthood and how you live your life because she thinks that there are these really cute little things to have hanging around your house and I look at them and think of nothing but plagues and uh, we were different.
So does Michael Aronowitz, Vivian's husband. He's got a fixation with frogs and he's got little frog things all over his property.
Oy vey.
Okay, so first of all, there's a repeating phrase about the reason that Moses is asking for the people to be able to leave, and it is God saying, let them go so they could worship me in the desert. So that's a recurring theme that will keep coming up. But the first of the few plagues are plausibly things that the magicians could do, or things that humans can do inadvertently or on purpose. In other words, we are looking now at this idea of looking at legislation in our very own country that says, whatever damage happens because of development and industry and everything, we can no longer look at the cost to human lives to calculate whether we should keep that legislation. I'm being facetious, but that's basically what my understanding is. So a plague, water turning red, that has happened. There are communities, there are people who live in Appalachia who can tell you that miraculously one day a source of water turned red or green or yellow or neon or something, right? So that doesn't seem implausible.
No.
I stopped specifically right before this next one, which feels like it has a little bit more, the next sentence, which we'll go on and we'll go into a different zone. But every one of the plagues is plausibly something created by humans, whether advertently or inadvertently. And even the Pharaoh would not have the power to negate them necessarily. Okay, go ahead, Alan.
On that first point that you made, was this a subterfuge? It was the whole point of this whole exercise was to free the slaves and move them toward the land that had been promised. And yet the claiming to Pharaoh, we only want to go for 3 days and, and do a little prayer action and a little sacrifice with the implication that they'd be back and be available as a workforce again. And that was never the intention, was it?
Well, I understand it in a different, from a different angle. Is first of all, the Israelites were clearly not ready in any way, right? Mm-hmm. They needed to first see that this Pharaoh is not the God, number one, and that there is something grander and that there's a faith to be had in leaving at least a certainty that they know to the great uncertainty. So maybe slavery is not as bad as the unknown, right? So that's part of the dichotomy that's going on here, the part of the getting ready. And
Hmm.
I forgot my third point, but if I think about it, I will.
You know, this is not God's idea. I think it's pretty important to think about that. God doesn't say, just tell them we're going out into the desert to pray for a while. This is a figment of Moses's, I think.
Well, I had lines 16 and 26 highlighted. Well, let me get to a better translation. No, I'm going to go to my poor translation because it's right in front of me. Go thee unto Pharaoh in the morning. Lo, he goeth. Oh, no, wait. Forget it. That's the water part. I didn't want to do the water one yet.
So you hear this point, I want to go back because I thought when Hashem first came to Moshe, when he was still in Midian, there was some mention of you. I want you to bring the people out to the desert to pray to me.
Then, right,
Yeah.
right. But you're
Right,
saying
so-
that he carried this forward to now.
Yeah.
Huh?
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, and that's the other thing when we read this stuff, a lot of times it seems we're reading it in a chronology and we don't know that chronology. A lot of times it seems like things are repeated on purpose or it was a different author, you know, right? So it's like, that's why I think some of this gets confusing when we come to it every year because it seems, so didn't we just hear that back then, but in a slightly different iteration, you know? So it seems like it's a new instance, but it's actually a reiterative, kind of like the four gospels, you know, the same story seen from four different points of view.
Like it says in the Haggadah, we were all there.
Yep. Sorry to interrupt. I'm just gonna get that in fast.
So I'm going to read from, this is from Rabbi Daniel Pressman's study guide. So specifically relating to patterns in the plagues. As early an authority as Rabbi Judah arranged the plagues into three distinct groups. It's clear that the arrangement follows a narrative itself. The first two plagues in each group are preceded by distinct warning. The third in each group, vermin, boils, and darkness, they strike without warning. So there's a rhythm. The plagues build up, right? They are the first one simple. The sorcerers of the Pharaoh could replicate, right? Then we build, and then each one. Okay, we're still stuck in a place. Who's stuck? That's to be debated. Is it Pharaoh stuck? Is it the Israelites stuck? Is it Moses and Aaron stuck? Right? Everybody needs to believe. And the series ending, of course, with the last plague, which we actually, oddly enough, I think don't read about today. They build to something that is the ultimate, where like no society can survive that, no matter what. The smartest people in the world cannot save a society whose secrets are all exposed, right? Because that creates internal warfare. And that has always proven to be the hardest one to get over. So there's a rhythm, and that rhythm is what we're beginning to see here now. And occasionally there's an interjection that reminds of why, like what, as Alan is saying, why are you going to believe them? They're just going to go and do some, this kind of stuff and then come back. Well, they're not ready to go. And the readiness is not all the way to the promised land yet. Don't forget that the readiness to go out is only to be at the foot of Mount Sinai at this point. The rest is not even part of the discussion yet. Then the other thing, on closer study, one notes that these three groups of plagues are closely linked to the three basic aspects of the Egyptian exile that were to be liquidated by redemption: alienhood, slavery, and affliction. So, if the alienhood was relieved by whatever happened next, right? They got the best lands, they became a great nation. Whoops, this could be problematic. So the slavery was the answer to it. The enslavement of the Israelites was not to build great buildings, it was to prevent them from becoming a great army that could rise against Pharaoh. And then the idea of affliction before redemption. And the affliction is that's the problematic one, because the affliction could be, everybody could be afflicted, but that's where the start of the differentiation, that the God of the Israelites protects the Israelites from the afflictions. That's, where the beginning of the faith turning part. Okay, I'm reading. Matan says the plague groups represent an escalation, yes. And then Sarah, also the necromancers lose power to reproduce the plagues, cannot reproduce the lice, etc. Oh, interesting, okay.
We're gonna read the rest of them, aren't we?
Yeah, let's keep going. So now, whoops, no, it just flew off. Now we're gonna go through the end of chapter 8. So it's lines 12 through 28 or something to that effect.
I can read it.
Sure.
And the Lord said to Moses, say to Aaron, stretch out your staff and strike the dust of the land, and there will be lice in all the land of Egypt. And thus they did. And Aaron stretched out his hand with his staff and struck the dust of the land. And there were lice in man and in beast. All the dust of the land became lice in all the land of Egypt. And thus the soothsayers of Egypt did with their spells to take out the lice, but they were unable. And the lice were in man and in beast. And the soothsayer said to Pharaoh, God's finger it is. And Pharaoh's heart toughened, and he did not heed them, just as the Lord had spoken. And the Lord said to Moses, rise early in the morning and station yourself before Pharaoh. Look, he will be going out to the water, and say to him, thus said the Lord, send off my people that they may worship me. For if you do not send off my people, I am able to send against you and against your servants and against your people and against your houses the horde, and the houses of Egypt will be filled with the horde and the soil too on which they stand. But I shall not set apart on that day the land of Goshen, upon which my people stands, so that no horde will be there.
Wait a second. I'm sorry to interrupt, but it doesn't say I shall not set apart. It says I shall set apart.
So apart on that day the land of Goshen upon which my people stands, so that no horde will be there, that you may know that I am the Lord in the midst of the land. And I shall set a ransom between my people and your people. Tomorrow this sign will be. And thus the Lord did. With a heavy horde came into the house, and a heavy horde came into the house of Pharaoh and the house of his servants, and in all the land of Egypt, and the land was ravaged in the face of the horde. And Pharaoh said to Moses and Aaron, and said, go sacrifice to your God in the land. And Moses said, it is not right to do thus. For the abomination of Egypt we will sacrifice to the Lord our God. If we sacrifice the abomination of Egypt before their eyes, will they not stone us? And 3 days' journey into the wilderness we shall go, and we shall sacrifice to the Lord our God as he has said to us. And Pharaoh said, I myself will send you off, that you may sacrifice to the Lord your God in the wilderness. Only you must not go far away. Entreat on my behalf. And Moses said, look, I am going out from your presence, and I shall entreat the Lord that the horde may turn away from Pharaoh and from his servants and from his people tomorrow. Only let not Pharaoh continue to mock by not sending the people off to sacrifice to the Lord. And Moses went out from Pharaoh's presence and entreated the Lord. And the Lord did according to Moses' word, and the horde turned away from Pharaoh and from his servants and from his people. Not one remained. And Pharaoh hardened his heart this time too, and he did not send off the people.
Just got to make sure the horde is the locusts, yes?
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting. I had to do a double take on that too.
There seems like there might have been a little intimation of what Arnie was asking about the religious practice, where it seems as though they were being prevented from worshiping the way they were intended to, or the way the whatever rituals might be, they weren't able to do them well in Egypt. That seemed, I thought that might have been implicit in some of the lines there, that that they couldn't properly, in the land of their enslavement, they couldn't properly carry out their rituals, or we couldn't.
And again, the notion of having the Pharaoh, the Egyptians, and the Israelites see the fault in the notion of Pharaoh being God. So line 16 is a very interesting one. God says to Moses, early in the morning, present yourself to Pharaoh as he is coming to the water. There's a lot written about this. Yeah. So it's the coming out of the water. So there, what I read is that the going to the water in the morning is for bodily function, relieving yourself, cleaning up, right? It's a human thing to do. Why does a God need to go down to the water to take care of his needs, whatever they may be? It's another example of the simultaneous bringing the faith of the Israelites up and bringing the Pharaoh's image down in everybody's eyes.
In other words, you're saying God doesn't need to do normal bodily functions first thing in the morning.
At all.
It's not his purview.
Right.
That's what I learned. I learned that Pharaoh had to, because he was coming off as a god, that everybody thought he didn't have the normal bodily functions. So he had to sneak down to the Nile in the morning, early in the morning, to relieve himself and take care of his bodily functions. And and that was why, because as a God man, he didn't have that need. That's what I learned anyway.
Yeah, I learned another thing. I was going to wait till we get to the end, but again, Rabbi Sachs, that's another thing he brought up about the importance ultimately of the darkness, because if the Pharaoh was supposed to be like a sun god, and that's so everyone could see, to the degree he could hide, having to do his bodily functions. If darkness came and he couldn't bring the light back, then it was obvious to everyone. If they believe their eyes, which now we can start to wonder if that's always the case with people, but so that was a really death blow to Pharaoh's being a deity. The ultimate embarrassment.
At least in this first group of plagues, the Nile is an important part of it, or important element in it. And we can go back to the beginning of Shemot, when with the discovery, or with the rescue of Moses. It's the princess, or the Pharaoh's daughter, coming down to do whatever she needed to bathe at the Nile, to bathe in the water. So they didn't have running water in the palace, I'm sure, but or I imagine, but the idea that it was important to their ritual, their daily ritual.
Right, and the idea of the water being a source of life. And so we have that from, we have a number of reasons to say that. So specifically with Moses, right? The river is what saved his life. So the first plague being an example that the river could also be a source of death, and onward, because the river is a very important image. Yuda?
Yeah, I like this. There is this ongoing image of, going down to the water and then coming out of the water. And we have Moses, that happened with Moses when he was saved. And then we have Bathsheba coming down, or Batya coming down and getting Moses, and she's goes into the water, and then she brings Moses out of the water as well. And here we have not only the Pharaoh going down and then coming out of the water, but we also have the water contaminated by blood. We have frogs coming out of the water. Um, Water is a prevailing background image of all that happens here. It is the desert.
But we have a tradition of a purifying effect of water. What we do with the mikveh. Is what we're talking about now directly linked to, say, the Christian practice of baptism, that dunking somebody in the water makes them pure again, or releases them from, their sins.
I thought about that, the parallel too of the mikveh and the
That,
baptism.
that's where they got it from. Yeah,
Is it?
absolutely.
Okay.
I've definitely always felt that's something that
No,
they,
they
they
definitely
Christians wouldn't
got.
understand it now, but that's one of the rituals I think that
There's no
that's
question. There's no
Yeah,
question
absolutely.
about it.
So I just want to say a huge caveat, because the idea of a water cleansing you of your sins, meaning all you got to do is get in the water and your sins will be cleansed, whereas a mikveh, the ritual bath, the point of it is not to cleanse you of your sins, but to cleanse you so you can do mitzvot, right? It's a very different
Right.
aspect. It cleanses you so that what you do next, and it doesn't, there's no mention
Leman.
ever of cleansing
Leman.
sins or
Leman.
forgiving. Yeah.
Well,
What was
in
that,
the
Ellen?
Leman, right?
Thank you.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I don't want to get into it as a big deal here but I think there's a little misunderstanding. There is something about the baptism to help with sin, but sin is actually supposed to be taken care of by the deity of
Mm.
Jesus.
Mm.
So that's, that's the way that's presented. And the baptism is like a follow-up situation to just is like it's a ritual that it testifies to the fact that you've done this.
Actually, baptism in the Catholic Church is to take care of what's called original sin that you're born with. That would be the Yetzer Hara.
Mhm.
And then the other sins are all covered
Yeah.
by Jesus. I don't.
I was never talking about Catholicism because that's a whole other deal.
That's the original church where all other came out of, the Lutheran and the Episcopal and the Baptist and all of that came out of it. The Catholic Church set up their doctrine based on Judaism. It's all based on Judaism. If you look, even the garments of the priests, the colors that they wear are taken from the priests and the Levites and what they wore for different things. So it's all really taken from there.
I've never
and
There's a lot of
really,
remember that
distortion.
the story came out of John the Baptist
That's where it came
watching
from.
Jesus,
That's
and they were
exactly
all
right.
still Jews at that point,
But
so
he
it's all
was there. He was there doing mikvahs.
right.
He
Mhm.
was
The
there
same
doing
thing like with the
mikvahs.
communion that we all know we can see the reference to the Passover Seder, but
Right.
they've taken these same, that's why the Judeo-Christian history, right? But they don't understand, they kind of lost track of the source of it all.
Yes, a lot did.
Alan, you were trying to say something,
Well,
and
just
then
I
Artie,
just
I'll
wanted
follow
to
you after.
reiterate your point that the purpose of the mikveh is not to wash your sins away. It's to prepare you
Correct.
whatever ritual you're going to do to make sure that you're purified or cleansed in order to do it, but it doesn't, the mikveh doesn't wash anything away other than cleanse yourself, then make yourself clean and appropriate for these rituals.
And just like the Pharaoh Japanese bath, you actually clean off before going to the mikveh,
Right.
right? So the
We'll
purification
go back to
happens
my old
before.
trope that this is another tradition to differentiate the divine from the not just the profane, but the divine from the
Mundane, the
the
mundane.
mundane.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. But then they've expanded that to say that Jesus did this for all of us. This is why they say they don't have to follow the rest of the commandments, because it supersedes that. Jesus did that one final, ritual that will cleanse them. So all you have to do is accept Jesus, and you don't have to get rid of the original sin yourself, because he's done it for you, which is to some degree probably symbolized by his baptism. That was a turning point in his
No,
whole
not
story.
by his baptism, by
No.
the crucifixion.
Yeah. Okay. So then what? Well, okay. I'm
There was
speaking out
no
of turn because
there
I'm not a
was no
Catholic scholar, but I mean,
there
the
was no
baptism.
baptism. There was only mikveh.
Well, whatever they call John the Baptist. Why in
That's a
Christian
Catholic
liturgy?
thing that came later. John
Yeah.
was a Jew. He
Right,
was.
but I'm talking about
So was Jesus.
historically, supposedly, these events
They
that were
made that up.
witnessed
They made that up. John the Baptist. His name wasn't John the Baptist. It's a Catholic thing.
So
Okay.
they're
Okay,
really,
Arnie has patiently had his hand up.
yeah,
Arnie?
listen, there's no date when Christianity started. They were all Jews in the beginning.
Exactly.
Paul started preaching to the Goyim a little later, but basically there was no differentiation. The Christians didn't call themselves anything. They were Jews. And around 600, there was a written edict from the Christian church saying that the Christians had to stop observing Yom Kippur and they should eat pork and all these other things because they were too Jewish. Okay? They were trying to separate and make a distinction between the two groups, and that's how it's separated. But it's fuzzy. You can't say it just started here.
Nobody's saying that, Arnie. 600 AD you're talking about? That's 600
Yeah.
years later. That's quite
Yeah,
a bit later than the
exactly.
actual.
Exactly.
All right,
That's the
well, you got to
point.
read you
For
got to read the
hundreds
new.
of years, there wasn't a big differentiation. It's just like
It
now.
was a
You got
huge
Reform. The
that's not
Hasidim
true.
would consider the Reform
I
When
disagree.
and how
Goyim.
did the
I
Christians
disagree. I
separate
totally
from
disagree with
Judaism?
that.
Well, read
But
history like I
you
do.
read the
It
new.
was
You
according
go
to
read the New Testament. Have you read the New Testament?
Not only that, but I've read the Nag Hammadi.
All right. Well, then
And
you know that Saul went out. I don't really want to get into this,
then
but
let's not. I made my point. I'm happy.
600 years AD is way after the original.
Right. Read. That's all I can
hold
say.
on.
Look it up.
I'm very well educated.
Rome
I beg
adopted
your pardon, but
Christianity in
let me tell you
313.
something, Arnie.
One
Hold
at a
on.
time. One at a time,
Don't,
Sarah.
first of all, don't tell me to go read because I am extremely well read and educated on the New Testament. Way better than you are. I can tell you that.
How do you know?
I know because I had to do a deep, deep search, and you didn't do a deep search. You've read
How
some
do you know what
history.
I've read? You don't know what I've read.
Because you don't know the actual. If you're saying that it didn't happen for 600 years and that Paul only went out to Jews,
No, I
that is
didn't say Jews. I said the Goyim. You didn't hear me. He
you
was the first to
said they were
preach.
all Jews.
No.
Well,
I'm
the
not
Okay,
first
saying
church
Arnie,
was all
First
Arnie,
of
Jews.
all,
can you
Paul
Sarah.
take
went to
away the
Syria.
date and just elucidate the point you're making without using the 600 years? What? Because I lost the point meanwhile, and I'd rather hear the point.
The point was, there wasn't a clean distinction between the religions. Just like now, the Hasidim might consider the Reform a bunch of goyim. You know, it's all just different groups that they, you know, and they call themselves Christians perhaps, but just like the Reformed Jews might call themselves Reconstructionists or something else. It was just a word. And on my only point was there wasn't a black and white date where you could say Christianity was created.
Okay,
Like, say
thank you,
something now?
Sarah. Go ahead.
Okay, that is true. There is a successive history. That's not what we were talking about. We were talking about certain rituals and where they came from. And said that the Catholic Church is the church that started the baptism ritual. Before that, it was just mikvah. And I know that because I was raised Catholic and I know the doctrine very, very well. And I also know about Constantine and all the other history. So I don't want to be told I should go read something.
Okay.
I didn't mean to insult you. I meant to read a particular
That's
thing,
okay. I don't mind. I
which
don't mind.
I'm going to
I
send
don't mind
you.
being insulted, but when I say something,
I'm not insulting you.
my
I'm going to
goodness.
send you the thing that I read. Okay.
I think the
Okay,
point you
all
made
right.
is
That you
the
can send it to me, but I'm saying, if you want to know, like, for example, all the time that I went to school, what the priests wore and their garments, and all of the things and the altar and the incense and everything, that's the Catholic Church. The believers that Paul went to, the original church, and I don't even think in the time of Constantine, they didn't have all those rituals.
Right.
Only that came with the Catholic Church, is what I'm telling you. I'm not saying it makes them great or anything. I'm just telling you where it originated.
So I think part of what makes our study group so strong is because of the different backgrounds. And I
Yes,
think, I mean,
absolutely.
yeah,
Absolutely. And
because
and
Sarah, I
I'm
think let me just one thing.
sure.
I think that what you bring to us is that experience that you had before, and then you didn't just fall into Judaism, but you actually
Exactly.
researched your own
Absolutely. I mean,
traditions.
I grew up Orthodox Catholic. I mean, we went to church every day. I had to wear modest clothing. I mean, I might as well have been an Orthodox Jew, except I was an Orthodox Catholic. So I had a really strong, background in it. So whatever I can bring to the plus, you're right, Aviva. I went all the way to Israel to figure out the New Testament and who this guy Jesus was. So I'm not saying lightly, but I've studied for I guess I started in about 1972. So go figure it out. That's how many years. And did you ever read
53.
did you ever read the Constantine's sword?
Yep.
Arnie, have you read Constantine's sword?
No,
Oh,
I don't think I did.
you got to read that book. It's fantastic. Unbelievable. It's the whole history of the Jews and the Catholic Church, and it's a deep read. You will love it.
I know his mom was really the big instigator, and um,
Huge.
yeah, and all of a sudden she visits Israel and goes, "Oh yeah, this is where he was crucified. This is where he's buried. Let's build a church here." Oh, by the way, they found his cross. Let's put it in there. I mean,
That
she
was
she
that was
created
Helen.
the whole thing.
Yeah, that was Constantine's mother, Helen.
Yeah,
She
mother.
went to Israel and brought back a little piece of this of what she claimed was the cross. What happened was he consolidated his kingdom under Christianity. Before that, Christians were sought, they were killed. They were
I'm seeing a good subject come up for our Judaism 101. I'm
anyway.
seeing it
Yeah.
formulate,
Oh, very good.
but for now I want to hear what Yuda has to say. So Yuda, unmute. Unmute, please.
You're muted.
He knows. if you just press what appears where I say S to
I got
unmute,
it.
there
I
we
got
go.
it.
Okay.
The real separation really started with the destruction of the temple in 70 CE,
Mhm.
and it took some 200 or 300 years. The main thing that actually created the separation was when Jesus was deified. The Jews couldn't deal with that because they considered it a violation of the
That
Ten
was
Commandments.
blasphemy.
Right.
And it seems like for the most part, so much of this was not actually driven by either the Jews or the Christians, but by the Romans.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
Romans during the Bar
That's
Kokhba
right.
revolution, revolt, which
Mhm.
took place like 100 years after the temple was destroyed. The Christians did not participate in that revolt. Only the Jews did. So already, the Romans had successfully, as divide and conquer. They had successfully driven a wedge between these
Wait
two
a
groups.
minute, Yehuda, they weren't Christians at that time. The Romans were not Christians.
I
No,
didn't
but the
say the
Christians
Romans
were
are
Oh, okay,
Christians.
okay. Pardon
I'm
me.
saying that the Romans had a political agenda of
Yeah.
how to deal with these people. Basically, in both cases, they divided them in half, and they divided them in half during the revolt of Bar Kokhba because the Christians
Yeah.
didn't do that,
Right.
and the
That's right.
Romans definitely. It took it becoming the empire's religion for it to really solidify. But up until then, they were just both a couple groups and they had a lot of common background. The deification definitely separated the Jews out completely. The Jews didn't want to
Yeah.
have anything to do with it. I'm not sure that the Christians were that way. It took the Romans to actually separate all that out. And it's interesting that this was not, in my mind, it was not a religious thing on either part. It was a political thing that happened.
It's always a political thing, and
combination.
people use religion to get their politics in order to control the what is it called? The
Silent
something of the-
majority.
No, the something the drugs of the masses, or I
Oh,
don't know.
Opiate,
yeah.
the
Religion
opiate
the
of the
is the
opiate.
people.
opiate. Yeah.
The opiate of the people.
Of the masses. That
Well,
was
I
a
think we
quote of Karl Marx's.
Karl Marx's.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're a good group, and we
Not
have lots of.
Groucho Marx's.
Most ridiculous thing I ever heard. Okay.
So also, did you know that Nero converted to Judaism?
No, really?
Yeah,
Are you
Did he do
joking?
it
I
while
never
he
know
was
when you're
fiddling?
serious.
he was one of the fiddlers on the roof.
Oh,
No,
evade
no,
me.
seriously.
I did it again. I went for your joke.
No, it wasn't a joke. It started off as serious. I mean,
He actually wasn't fiddling.
That
He
was
was
another
playing the
guy.
lyre. There
He's
was no
trying to see if he
violin
could-
at that time.
Yeah, Cyrus was another guy.
Well, I've just proved definitively that human beings can do faster than AI because my AI search said exactly basically what Yehuda said. Between 70 and 135 CE, after the fall of the temple,
Mhm.
is when most historians consider. My question is, what is the
Wait,
consensus?
finish your sentence. You dropped off in the middle of a sentence and changed.
Give me the splits between Christianity and Judaism. I use the word, when did the historians' consensus that it officially separated, and everything came up with from 70 to 135.
The amazing thing is that, at 70, what really happened was it was the beginning of rabbinic Judaism.
Mhm.
Because, everything shifted from the temple to the Sanhedrin in Yavne, which was not in Jerusalem anymore. Getting out of this place that was constantly attacked for centuries and centuries and going to a different venue was probably, a matter of trying to be safer. But also, that there was a recognition by the wise people that the Torah itself was a very valuable thing that could be used to replace the temple. And that was an amazing jump in their own thinking.
Uh-huh. That it was a spiritual situation, not a
Yeah.
material one.
In the name of equanimity, equality, and fairness. The second paragraph says, this is for Arnie, It was a gradual, multi-stage and localized process. We understand that, and they didn't have Twitter then, rather than a single event, evolving from a Jewish movement, sometimes called quote unquote the way, into a predominantly Gentile religion.
Yeah, so just
There you
like
have it.
Jewish groups follow different rabbis today, there
Right.
was this
That's what
Jesus
Arnie was
Rebbe.
trying to say.
The
Yeah.
Jesus Rebbe and a certain number of Jews were his disciples,
Mhm.
followed him. And sometimes thousands of people showed up. And, you know, the Romans didn't like them. They were calling him the king of the Jews, supposedly. Now, I don't know how much of this is true or not, but
No, that's
get
true.
I get the overriding idea of what happened politically. If you
I
wanna
mean,
look
he
at-
was also turning over the tables of the money changers,
He
etc. That
came
is
in,
true.
he did right in the temple, and so it drew he was drawing a lot of attention to himself.
Well, he was
But
trying to like there was a spiritual aspect. He wasn't going for the, the materialism and
right,
taking offerings and stuff, buying
right.
buying your cleanliness and stuff like that.
He was a spiritual socialist with revolutionary tendencies.
Yes.
And
Peaceful revolutionary.
I like him quite a bit, except I don't like the idolatry or anything. I don't like
Right.
the ritual and all that. But you know, I could just see this Rebbe completely disrupting the Romans and everybody. He probably disrupted everybody.
The
You know, his
Romans
mother
and the
thought of him
Sanhedrin.
as a good Jewish boy.
Could,
Yes.
You
Yeah,
know,
could we get back to the
Yes.
the
to the
parsha?
study.
We have one more chapter, and it's
Parsha.
chapter 9. Free for all. Whoever unmutes first gets to read chapter 9.
I can read.
Okay.
And can you hear me over here? I have a dead spot in my room.
Yes.
Okay. And the Lord said to Moses, "Come into Pharaoh, and you shall speak to him. Thus said the Lord, God of the Hebrews, send off my people, and they may worship me, that they may worship me. But if you refuse to send them off, and you still hold on to them, look, the hand of the Lord is about to be against your livestock, which is in the field, against the horses, against the donkeys, against the camels, against the cattle, and against the sheep, a very heavy pestilence. And the Lord will set apart the livestock of Israel from the livestock of Egypt, and nothing of the Israelites will die. And the Lord set a fixed time, saying, Tomorrow the Lord will do this thing in the land. And the Lord did this thing on the next day, and all the livestock of Egypt died, but of the livestock of Israel not one died. And Pharaoh sent, and look, not a single one had died of the livestock of Israel. And Pharaoh's heart hardened, and he did not send off the people. And the Lord said to Moses and to Aaron, Take you handfuls of soot from the kiln, and let Moses throw it toward the heavens before Pharaoh's eyes. And it shall become a fine dust over all of the land of Egypt, and it shall become on man and on beast a burning rash erupting in boils in all the land of Egypt. And they took the soot from the kiln, and they stood before Pharaoh, and Moses threw it toward the heavens, and it became a burning rash with boils erupting on man and on beast. And the soothsayers could not stand before Moses because of the burning rash, for the burning rash was on the soothsayers and in all of Egypt. And the Lord toughened Pharaoh's heart, and he did not heed them, just as the Lord had spoken to Moses. And the Lord said to Moses, Rise up early in the morning and station yourself before Pharaoh, and you shall say to him, Thus said the Lord, God of the Hebrews, send off my people that they may worship me. For this time I am about to send all my scourges to your heart and against your servants and against your people, so that you may know that there is none like me in all the earth. For by now I could have sent forth my hand, and I could have struck you and your people with pestilence, and you would have been wiped off the face of the earth. And yet, for this I have let you stand, so as to show you my power, and so that my name will be told through all the earth. You still block the way to my people, not sending them off. Look, I am about to rain down very heavy hail at this time tomorrow, and the like of which there has not been in Egypt from the day of its founding until now. And now gather in your livestock and everything you have in the field, every man and the beast that will be in the field, and that are not taken indoors. The hail shall come down on them, and they shall die. Whoever feared the Lord's word among Pharaoh's servants sheltered his slaves and his livestock indoors. And whoever paid no mind to the Lord's word left his slaves and his livestock in the field. And the Lord said to Moses, stretch out your hand over the heavens, and there shall be hail in all the land of Egypt, upon man and upon beast and upon all the grass of the field in the land of Egypt. And Moses stretched out his staff over the heavens, and the Lord let loose thunder and hail, and fire went along earthward, and the Lord rained hail on the land of Egypt. And there was very heavy hail, with fire flashing in the midst of the hail, the like of which had not been in all the land of Egypt from the time it became a nation. And the hail struck through all the land of Egypt, whatever was in the field, from man to beast, and all the grass of the field did the hail strike, and every tree of the field did it smash. Only in the land of Goshen, in which the Israelites were, was there no hail. I don't think I can read anymore, sorry.
Okay, someone pick up, we're 27. Craig, you want to give a little read? You have
And
the
Pharaoh
giving
sent and called to Moses. Well, I was trying to, but that's okay.
Mm,
Is it okay if I read?
yeah, go ahead and read.
Well, I can. All
Hopefully
right.
we'll hear
Maybe
you.
you can. Well, I don't want to take a chance on not being heard, so somebody else can go ahead.
Yeah, you're coming in kind of in and out. Alan, let's hear your lovely voice.
And and Pharaoh sent and called to Moses and to Aaron and said to them, I have offended this time. The Lord is in the right, and I and my people are in the wrong. Entreat the Lord, and no more of God's thunder and hail, and let me send you off, and you shall not continue to stay. And Moses said to him, As I go out of the city, I shall spread out my hands to the Lord. The thunder will stop, and the hail will be no more, so that you may know that the earth is the Lord's. And as for you and your servants, I know that you still do not fear the Lord God. And the flax and the barley were struck, for the barley was in bud, and the flax was in ear, but the wheat and the emmer were unripened. And Moses went out from Pharaoh's presence out of the city, and spread out his hands to the Lord, and the thunder stopped, and the hail and the rain were not slewest earthward. And Pharaoh saw that the rain and hail and thunder had stopped, and he continued to offend, and he hardened his heart, both he and his servants. And Pharaoh's heart toughened, and he did not send off the Israelites, just as the Lord had spoken through Moses.
Aha. You wonder why we didn't finish the plagues in this reading today.
Wow.
There's a reason. Um, I wanted to point out that the parashah next week is called Bo, right?
Mhm.
And it starts with the words, Vayomer Adonai el Moshe, God says to Moses, Bo el Paro. And it says, go to Pharaoh, or come to Pharaoh. And that
Tomorrow,
line is already used in this parashah this week.
Yeah, didn't we study that once before, those two words, go and come? I think
Exactly.
we did. I
Yeah.
think we did, but I
And
don't
so
remember. I don't
the reason
remember. Go ahead.
the reason I'm bringing it up is because in this instance, during these plagues still, it is more of a come try to see things from Pharaoh's point of view. We're not getting there. Let's see if we can see from his point of view.
Oh, yeah,
Whereas
that's interesting. Yeah.
Whereas the way I see it is in next week's parashah, it's more of the get into his head.
Yeah.
It's a little different. Like, first, come to see where he's coming from. But the next bull coming
Right.
next week, I think, is more of like get into his head. This is what's really going to convince you. You're going to be inside his head in
Yeah.
an uninvited voice.
Well, there's a podcast called The Daily Beast that is exactly that, getting into the big
It's-
T's head.
But it's political, yeah, but
It's
it's, yeah,
political and it's current, but getting into his head. So that's kind of interesting.
yeah.
We're going to look inside Pharaoh's head, and other
We're-
people are.
Next week we're in person though, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
you're in Temple. I don't know if I can come. If I'll see what Rebecca says.
All right.
My car's not here yet. So
You have
You,
to.
you're muted. Mute.
I wanted to mention that we actually were in an environment that had hail like that.
yeah.
In 1998, Bowling Green, Kentucky, which is about 60 miles south of us, had softball size hail that supposedly totaled 10,000 cars.
Wow.
And we were actually shopping for cars at that time, and we looked at a car north of us that had been in this storm, and it was dented beyond belief.
Unbelievable.
It made it supposedly it was a $500 million worth of damage and money from 30 years ago. It was a storm beyond belief,
Yeah.
and people feared for their lives. I think 3 people
Yeah.
died from it. I mean,
New-
can you imagine? You know, this is a softball right here. This is a big, big, big block of ice hitting you. Wow.
Jersey used to have hailstorms in the summer.
But
I mean,
that
not like
big?
that. No,
Oh my,
no,
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 not
this
that
was,
big.
you know,
but
it,
it was still, I mean, it still made an impression because
Yeah.
you didn't want to be out
I
in
mean,
it.
I think golf balls are considered the biggest I've
Yeah.
ever heard. Baseballs. That's
this
wow.
one thing, we actually had some friends who were in construction, and my God, they had work for a long time because it really destroyed roofs.
Wow.
It broke windshields throughout town. It broke windows in houses all over town.
That's amazing.
We rarely get hail in Hawaii, but I've
Right.
witnessed 2 hailstorms.
Mhm.
One in 1970 where the hail was a little smaller than golf balls, and everybody had tin roofs back then.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
It sounded like machine gun fire.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
So, but it didn't dent the. Did it dent the roofs?
Well, I'm sure it damaged a bunch of roofs. It didn't. I already had funky tin, so it didn't matter. So
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I was in one when I first got here too, over on Hilo side with a tin roof. And I mean, it wasn't golf ball size though, but it's crazy. I mean, it's
Yeah.
crazy when it rains on a tin roof, but you know.
I'm afraid this may get me perilously close to making something political, and I don't mean to do that, or maybe I do. But line 27 caught my eye. Pharaoh sent and called to Moses and to Aaron and said to them, I have offended this time. The Lord is in the right, and I and my people are in the wrong. And what kind of experience are we having with a leader who will never admit to being wrong, never
Oh.
admit to making a mistake? Now, granted, Pharaoh backs away from it, and he does his own taco, and turns around and says, "You're not going to go." But I think that's a remarkable point in there, or a noticeable point, that Pharaoh acknowledging that his choice damaged
wrong.
his people, and they were wrong not to follow, not to take steps that would prevent this from happening.
Well,
So he
there's
had
a lot of
momentary humility, huh?
Yeah.
there's a lot of nuance there. So his implication in the wrong, there could be there's a lot you can read into that. Part of it is that though he, as ruler of his own little universe, was entitled to use the labor of the people, the extra, cherry on top of the making them miserable, beyond that was something that wasn't necessary. So there's that kind of implication in there. But also, it is also a very clear indication that he is not buying it yet, but in the last two plagues we have the words, not just from stories, but actually in the Torah, that the Israelites' property was not damaged, and that Pharaoh could see with his eyes.
Mhm.
So yeah, he's beginning to see that there's something beyond, but he's not there yet. It's to me like the whole building of the plagues is Pharaoh's not there yet, because first Pharaoh needs to be convinced, but simultaneously the Israelites. I cannot take that out of the conversation, because that's where, I mean, that's going to unroll a little bit later on too, because we're not even really hearing the part yet, about the Israelites not on board yet.
Okay, here's a scary thought. I have my hand up. Can I go?
Yeah, of course.
I actually put my hand up. Yay. Anyway, so he doesn't really ever get it, Pharaoh. I mean, I don't see where he ever gets it. He's like completely loses his kid. Or is that just the Cecil B. DeMille's part of it? Anyway, he loses his kid, and then he loses his whole army. He loses his workforce. I mean, his whole, I'm sure another pharaoh took over, but I mean, basically, he loses everything. And
Okay, so what's the 9th plague? It's darkness.
Darkness.
And that
Oh,
I read
now, did you ever hear about that being so thick you couldn't move in it?
I've heard lots of things, but the point I wanted to make about what I read about it is that that was almost the ultimate direct message to Pharaoh, because Pharaoh was considered
The
Sun
sun
god.
god,
the
Sun
sun
god.
god.
right?
And by bringing darkness, that's why the 9th plague. We'll talk about it. I mean, we'll
Next
backtrack
week.
and talk about it, but
You
we
know,
won't talk
that's
about it
gotta
next week.
that's got to be the difference between the Hebrews and the Egyptians. Not that there isn't, some stuff going on maybe in there, but they didn't worship Pharaoh as a sun god, did they? I don't think so. I
I think
can't
he was
see that.
considered. I
I
think he
don't
was
think
considered sun god.
not by the Jews, though, not by the Hebrews. That's what I'm saying. So I think there was a definite split between the cultures, the tribes, the Egyptians, and the tribe of the tribe that Joseph brought in.
But the point is that the plagues are serving double duty in
Yeah.
this case leading up to the 9th plague,
Mhm.
because Pharaoh is ready to admit that, maybe he's to some degree not the end all, but that is if he's the god of the sun, but who created the sun? In other
That's
words,
my question. Exactly.
right.
And
That
why could the Hebrews move through the darkness and not the Egyptians? Didn't they go in the darkness, if I remember, correct me if I'm wrong? Didn't they go into the Egyptian houses to get the jewelry and stuff before they left?
They didn't steal it. They were
No,
they asked
I'm not
for it.
exactly, but didn't they do it in wasn't it after, or was it
Or
during that plague?
is that mission? Is that I don't know that
Yeah,
that's in the
that-
Torah. I think it's,
Marilyn knows.
We'll find out
Yehuda,
next
I was gonna say he didn't steal it, they asked for it, but wasn't that subterfuge? When they asked for
we're
it?
going to borrow it and we'll bring it back.
Yeah,
That's-
the borrowing it is not, they had no intention of bringing it
Well, where
back.
did it all end up? It ended up melted down in a golden calf, and then they had to drink it. Come on.
Well, they got what they had coming.
Can I just share a midrash that addresses that? That the taking of the jewels of the neighbors was, and they're freely giving it, was an acknowledgement that they took a few steps too far, and were cruel to the Israelites, and it was for future reparation. That's kind of the traditional midrash I've always
It is.
known about
Well,
that. Can I just
That's
say
sweet.
something?
How many years?
I'm going to say something really important right now. I'm going to try to practice this too. When we're not speaking, we should be muted, because when we just agree with someone, it changes and I can't hear the person speaking. Also, I think we should look at the screen and see that we've lost some people, and I'm not, this felt a little not manageable the last few minutes. So I'm going to recommend that we try to mute. At least it doesn't sound like we're arguing with someone when we're just interjecting an agreement, because it felt like some of that was happening. So,
Well, if you agree, you can just do this.
I've been mulling over something, Aviva, that you said earlier about the importance, perhaps, of the Hebrews not having been touched by this pestilence plague and the hail, but they didn't have to take any action to prevent that. And when we get to the final plague, there is a step that is required of them in order to be passed over. And I think that that's an interesting elevation, I guess, of the responsibility on both sides, that you're being protected or you're being brought out by God, but you must indeed do your part to merit that.
Well, it's interesting because if we consider that a certain amount of what's going on here is not convincing Pharaoh, but convincing the Jews to leave,
right,
by requiring them to do something for the 10th plague, they basically have to say, we agree and we will do this and move forward. And that's, so, I think that it's a good progression that leads to that. The important point that you brought up. Thanks.
Ruth Ellen?
I was also going to say it was more pragmatic because being the 10th, it was almost like a warm up, because the next thing was you're going to flee with unleavened bread, et cetera, so it was it really, it was like the preview. It was the warm up for the main attraction, which was getting out of there.
Well, we just saw in some of these plagues that they were informed in advance, but not every plague.
See,
some of the plagues you were not informed in advance.
I'm thinking about the idea that there's no archaeological evidence of this, because you think all this, the servants, if they still supposedly were in slavery, so how were they allowed to be on their way in Goshen? And they were, I guess, just ignoring everything, or Pharaoh was distracted by Moses and all of that, so that the taskmasters weren't doing their job. Some of that. It's iffy if you want to take it too literally, which is one of the reasons that I don't want to take it too literally. But I was going to say something else and I forgot. So, oh yeah, I know what I was going to say. I don't know if there's midrash about this, because at one point in those middle plagues that Marilyn was reading, it seemed like Pharaoh didn't get struck by boils instead of all of Egypt, but it seemed like he was outside of all of that for some reason. Am I wrong? Because you would think that it would lead him to soften his heart a little bit if he was actually suffering from this, or maybe it was part of his whole persona that he had to be godlike, and so he couldn't show his weakness. I don't know if there's any midrash around that.
I'm looking it up.
I think God had other plans for Pharaoh. Boils wasn't enough.
Yeah.
Did Craig say I missed it? Oh.
I mean, he wouldn't have listened to anyone. He must have seen everybody else in his whole kingdom. Maybe God spared him so that he could watch his kingdom go down. Yeah.
I'm going to share this. I'm not sure how well I think it'll appear well in this. This is the
look
page
at
from the
that.
Shik. This is the page from the Shik Haggadah that has the 10 plagues.
Oh, wow.
And-
That's amazing.
And I think, the art is just spectacular, I think.
Yeah.
Wow.
Are you going to show me that the boils, it looks like Pharaoh got the boils too, or just in
No,
general?
I'm looking for let's see here. Here's the boils here.
Is that this one?
I mean, Alan who painted, who
Point
did
out.
that? Yeah.
That is one of the artists that Alan showed us the beginning, Schick. And
Yeah.
it's from this Haggadah that some of us own.
Oh, yeah, that's right. What's his name? Shit. How do you spell it? S-H-Y?
SZYK.
Oh, S-Z-Y-K. Okay, I'll
Yeah.
look it up later.
Yeah, I was going to try to work some of this into the art, and I thought I already had taken up too much time, but I just thought
I really
that this.
I love that kind of intricate art, Alan. So thank you. I love that. That's really
Actually, believe it or not, your copy is better.
beautiful.
I'm looking at my book, and your copy is a little clearer than this one in my book.
S-Z-I-K.
Yeah, as SZYK.
I mean Y-K.
Yeah.
That's right. Y-K. Okay. Very good. Very
Yes.
good. I just met myself a new artist that I didn't know before.
Well,
I remember the pipe now. I don't know why I forgot. Yeah, I remember he was smoking he had two pictures, didn't he have two art? Did you have several of his?
yeah. Yes.
Yeah, because I remember now that I'm looking at it